Chapter 2594, Half-Step Grandmaster Stone Forest City, Candlelight Trading Firm. Following the NPC, Hermit and the bald man arrived at one of the basic meditation rooms on the trading firm's top floor. They were greeted by the sight of a woman in luxurious, dark blue robes and enveloped in a faint layer of mana. The woman was steadfastly focused on brewing a potion, her every action smooth and dexterous. A short moment later, the woman lifted her hand, holding a potion that radiated dense mana. She can brew the master-ranked advanced magic resistance potion so easily? She must not be far from becoming a Grandmaster alchemist. The scene had astonished Hermit and his companion. Master-ranked magic resistance potions were quite rare and costly on the market. They could, after all, enable Tier 3 players to roam level 100+ maps with harsh environments. However, master-ranked advanced magic resistance potions were even stronger. Not only could they help Tier 2 players survive in the severe environments in level 100+ maps, but the potion's effects would also last 24 full hours. Level 100+ maps had abundant resources, particularly those level 110 and above, but their environments were severe and dangerous. Only Tier 3 players could survive in these maps without aid. Unfortunately, the various powers had too few Tier 3 experts at this stage of the game, and they had to rely on their Tier 2 members to gather resources for their development. Hence, the demand for master-ranked advanced magic resistance potions was incredibly high. However, crafting master-ranked advanced magic resistance potions wasn't easy. Even a master alchemist wouldn't have more than a 30% success rate, and the potions took a long time to brew. Including the current rarity of master alchemists, there wasn't enough supply of these potions to meet demand. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, could effortlessly brew these potions. Moreover, she had completed her last potion with astounding speed. She was efficient enough to take on the work of 3 or 4 master alchemists. With those skills, she was likely on the brink of becoming a Grandmaster alchemist. Rather than Silent Wonder's alchemy standards, Hermit and the bald man were far more surprised to see that she had reached level 111. She was actually one level higher than they were. It seems the rumors calling Stone Forest City a sacred leveling ground were true, after all, Hermit muttered, staring at the level displayed above Silent Wonder's head in shock. Silent Wonder wasn't a pure combat player. Although players could gain EXP through their subclasses, they didn't earn nearly as much as combat players, who relentlessly grinded monsters in the fields. Despite that, Silent Wonder had still surpassed both of them. This fact alone made it clear how extraordinary a Guild 0 wing was. Fifth Uncle, Elder Hermit, isn't there still some time before the family competition begins? What's with the sudden visit? Silent Wonder asked, curious to see the two people enter the room. The Azure Chamber of Commerce held a competition between its main shareholder families once a year on the same date. The next competition would begin in 6 days. Even if her family intended to escort her to the Western continent, she had expected they'd only show up the day before. She had no clue why they'd show up so early without prior notice. Moreover, Hermit, the man responsible for Demon Stone Town's safety, had come to see her. These two didn't seem like they were simply here to escort her. There is indeed still some time before the competition, but that's not the only reason we've come, the middle-aged man informed her. I'm sure you are aware that the Zeus Corporation's support is a large part of the reason Azure enjoys its current success. Has something happened with the Zeus Corporation? Silent Wonder asked. The Zeus Corporation was one of the top 10 corporations in the world. The corporation's support was also a large part of the reason that the Azure Chamber of Commerce had grown over the years and achieved its current status in God's domain. Moreover, the Zeus Corporation had a considerable portion of the Super Guild, Violet Sword's shares. Violet Sword was relatively ancient, with over a century of history. It was one of the oldest super guilds to rise in the virtual gaming world. Its long history was only second to the 5 great super guilds, and the guild's relationship with the Zeus Corporation was why Azure had developed so smoothly on the Western continent. That's right. Violet Sword urgently needs lifestyle masters, so Zeus has decided that Azure will offer support. Since you are the greatest talent among our family's younger generation, you cannot avoid developing in Violet Sword. We have come to escort you to the guild's headquarters, the bald, middle-aged man explained, nodding. Develop in Violet Sword? But, Silent Wonder was stunned. I know you wish to remain in Zero Wing, seeing as it has helped you so much. Helplessly, the bald man continued, however, you know how much the Zeus Corporation has helped Azure. Zeus's help is the very reason that Azure maintains its hold on a Grade 1 or vein. You are one of the lifestyle masters the corporation handpicked. If you don't go, not only will our family lose Zeus's support, but we might also lose our hold on that vein, which Azure relies on to survive. The Zeus Corporation was rich and powerful. It also commanded considerable strength and influence in the West. One word from the corporation is all it would take to throw the Azure Chamber of Commerce to the wolves. Can you give me some time to think, fifth uncle? Silent Wonder hesitantly requested. We might have allowed you to do as you wish until now, but this concerns the family's future. We cannot allow you to continue this willful behavior anymore. The bald man snapped. Once the family competition has ended, you will travel to Violet Sword to continue your development. Take this time to prepare. You don't need to worry about your situation with Zero Wing. We will help you settle it. With that, the bald man and hermit turned and left the room, leaving Silent Wonder stupefied. After leaving the Candlelight trading firm, the two men headed straight for Zero Wing's residence. Don't you think you're being a little too impatient, Wuxiang? We should have given Wonder some time to accept the situation, Hermit commented, sending a sidelong glance at his companion. Accept it? Do you assume I don't want to? The bald man, Long Wuxiang, solemnly replied, offering a bitter smile. The Zeus Corporation has given us an ultimatum. In fact, the corporation has already delivered the other family's younger members to train with Violet Sword as a means to harass the Long family. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Even so, I'm afraid Wonder will not go obediently, Hermit said. With as stubborn as she is, persuading her will be difficult. That's why we're going to meet with Zero Wing. As long as Zero Wing willingly lets her go, she'll be easier to convince, Long Wuxiang said. What if Zero Wing refuses? You must realize that the guild is not to be trifled with, Hermit worriedly countered. Isn't that why you're here? Long Wuxiang replied, rolling his eyes. He shifted his gaze toward the nearby guild residence, sneering as he continued, Zero Wing doesn't have a choice. If Zero Wing refuses to let Wonder go, it will suffer the Zeus Corporation's wrath. Blow. Chapter 2595, True Ascension Realm Lost Town, Extraordinary Tower's second floor. As Shi Feng ascended the staircase to the third floor, more and stronger swordsmen continued to appear. On the first step, he had only faced 2 silver swordsmen. When he reached the 89th step, his opponents were 4 golden swordsmen. Not only had all of these golden swordsmen commanded combat standards nearly on par with the refinement realm, but all 4 had reached the truth realm as well. Combining both aspects, their combat power was far stronger than ordinary refinement realm experts. Moreover, the 4 golden swordsmen's coordination was as seamless as if they shared one mind. There were no gaps in their offense or defense, and they all possessed incredible basic attributes. Even Shi Feng struggled to cope with the golden swordsman's assault. If he hadn't had swords transmigration to defend himself, these golden swordsmen would have long since thrown him back down the staircase. I can easily handle these swordsmen one-on-one, but avoiding their coordinated attacks with the physique of a Tier 1 player is impossible. It seems my only option is to force my way through. After 3 minutes of fighting these 4 golden swordsmen, Shi Feng realized that continuing this battle was a waste of time. He couldn't find any weaknesses to take advantage of. The only method he could think of to reach the next step was to force his way past these swordsmen. Following which, Shi Feng stepped forward and sucked in a deep breath. He then raised the abyssal blade above his head, gathering mana around the weapon. A phantom of a gigantic greatsword immediately appeared above him. Although the extraordinary tower suppressed his physique to that of Tier 1, it did nothing to hamper his mana body. He could easily command his own mana in combat. In retaliation, the 4 golden swordsmen launched a joint attack, aiming for 16 of Shifeng's weak points. Before they had a chance to strike, Shifeng swung down the abyssal blade. Light shadow. Boom. After the phantom greatsword's descent, all 4 golden swordsmen stumbled back several steps, falling out of formation. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Shifeng charged at the nearest opponent. His target reacted quickly. Although the golden swordsman hadn't regained its posture, it used a horizontal slash in an attempt to stop Shifeng's charge. However, Shifeng didn't give the golden swordsman a chance to defend itself as his sacred sword transformed into a streak of light, deflecting the horizontal slash. He then thrust the abyssal blade at the golden swordsman's chest. Pung! Sparks flew as the fragmented legendary weapon collided with the golden swordsman's armor, shoving it back a few more steps before it fell. Finally, Shifeng tore a hole in the 4 golden swordsmen's formation. Now! With his target on the ground, Shifeng used void steps to confuse the 3 remaining golden swordsmen and escape their encirclement. He then leaped onto the 90th step. The moment Shifeng landed on the 90th step, a swordsman in black robes appeared before him. This black swordsman then thrust his weapon at Shifeng. The thrust was surprisingly powerful, and the instant the black swordsman's blade shot forward, it transformed into numerous particles of light that shot toward Shifeng. It was impossible to tell which attack was real and which was fake. An advanced combat technique? Shifeng's expression darkened when he recognized the move as a combat technique. This black swordsman's basic attributes and combat standards were even higher than the golden swordsman Shifeng had just faced. In fact, the black swordsman was on the cusp of reaching the flowing water realm. Combined with its advanced combat technique, Shifeng was no match for this opponent with just a Tier 1 physique. Of course, this disadvantage wasn't enough to make Shifeng give up. Instead, he brandished Killing Ray in response. Swords Transmigration. The instant the 2 weapons met, a deafening boom echoed throughout the 2nd floor. The impact was so powerful that Shifeng stumbled back down to the 89th step. He hadn't had time to readjust his posture, and the 4 golden swordsmen he had left behind subsequently threw him back down to the base of the 2nd floor staircase. The 90th step's black swordsman is amazing. I saw no excess movements, and it perfectly integrated an advanced combat technique. Not even domain realm experts could find any opening to take advantage of and would be forced to face its attacks head-on. Shifeng wasn't disappointed about returning to square one. Actually, he seemed rather excited. The black swordsman had highlighted some of his own flaws. He had reached the realm of truth's ascension realm, and his every action resembled a combat technique, but they weren't. His movements lacked the power of combat techniques, they only possessed the deception of true combat techniques. To put it simply, he hadn't made much progress in the ascension realm, and his foundations were unsteady. He had only grasped the vague concept of the realm, lacking its crucial concepts. The black swordsman, on the other hand, stood firmly in the ascension realm. Because of this, Shifeng couldn't yet ascend to the extraordinary tower's 3rd floor, despite having reached the ascension realm. If he could gain even a portion of the black swordsman's mastery over the ascension realm and perfectly integrate basic combat techniques with his every action, his combat power would definitely rise by a large margin. Meanwhile, during the time Shifeng was reflecting on his own flaws, a few other Zero Wing members were sent flying down the 2nd floor staircase as well. I did it. I finally did it, oh. Shadow Sword shouted ecstatically as he looked at the dense mana his body radiated. Turtledove, Alluring Summer, and the others who had fallen down the stairs similarly radiated dense mana. They had obviously unlocked their mana body's full potential. Moreover, Blue Frost, Flying Shadow, Stubborn Bone, and a few other Zero Wing members, who had only begun to unlock their mana bodies, revealed excited expressions. They had made significant progress during their climb on the Extraordinary Tower's 2nd floor staircase. Training in the Extraordinary Tower is really this effective? Shifeng looked at the players around him, astonished. While the Extraordinary Tower's mana provided quite a bit of help to players developing their mana control, Shifeng didn't think it'd be such an effective tool in helping them unlock their mana bodies. Learning the rules and how to manipulate mana wasn't an easy task, not to mention adapting those methods to one's mana body. Shifeng estimated that although Shadow Sword and the rest had been close to unlocking all of their mana body's potential, they should have still needed 3 to 5 days to reach 100%. And yet, they had succeeded in less than half a day. If every one of Zero Wing's main force members could make this much progress, every one of them would fully unlock their mana bodies in less than 10 days, becoming true powerhouses in God's domain. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Just as Shifeng turned his attention back to the second floor staircase, however, he received a call from Melancholic Smile. Guild leader, Azure's representatives have come to our residence. They wish to speak with you about taking Wonder to develop in the West's Violet Sword. They're hoping we won't hinder her future and just let her go. They visited Wonder before coming here, too, but it seems Wonder's reaction wasn't positive, Melancholic Smile reported. Violet Sword, huh? Shifeng could not contain his smile. Azure is certainly crafty. Will you meet with them? Melancholic Smile asked. That won't be necessary. Have Hell Rush send them away. Also, have him convey a message. I'll personally take Wonder to visit Violet Sword after the family competition to have a proper conversation with the Super Guild's people, so they don't need to bother. Shifeng calmly stated. Chapter 2596, Mighty Zero Wing. Times have changed. Stone Forest City, Zero Wing's residence. Long Wuxiang and Hermit sat by the French window, clearly unhappy, in Zero Wing's large, luxurious reception room. So you're saying that guild leader Black Flame has no intention of meeting us, Commander Rush? Long Wuxiang demanded, glaring at Hell Rush, who had just notified them of Shifeng's reply. That's right. He knows what you wish to discuss and requested that I relay a message. Once the family competition is over, he will personally take Silent Wonder to visit Violet Sword, so you don't have to bother, Hell Rush coolly informed the two men, nodding. The message stunned both of them, particularly Long Wuxiang. Long Wuxiang had considered many possible outcomes before visiting Zero Wing's residence, and had prepared a variety of arguments to persuade Shifeng to let Silent Wonder go. However, he never considered that Shifeng would simply refuse to meet with them, turning them away. However, what truly surprised the bald man was the fact that Hell Rush had followed Shifeng's instructions, conveying the message personally. The alliance between Netherworld Empire and Zero Wing was no longer a secret among the various superpowers, especially after the battle at the Dark World's teleportation gate. That battle had exposed the relationship between the two guilds. Hell Rush, however, was a famous slaughtering god on the Western continent. He even commanded Netherworld Empire's strongest Trump Legion. Even Violet Sword's guild leader would have to take him seriously, yet, he obediently played the role of Shifeng's messenger. Good. Since guild leader Black Flame understands the situation, we won't overstay our welcome. Long Wuxiang decided after calming himself. He then stood to leave the room with Hermit. After they left Zero Wing's residence, the air around Long Wuxiang dropped a few degrees, becoming so cold that nearby players shivered. Even the Azure experts that had tagged along shuddered as Long Wuxiang's frosty aura swept over them, to think that even the famous Hell Rush would obey Black Flame. I hadn't expected Zero Wing to have such a close relationship with Netherworld Empire. Violet Sword might make concessions if they find out about this, Hermit surmised, glancing at the twisted expression his comrade was making. Concessions? Long Wuxiang laughed. I admit that Zero Wing is clearly close with Netherworld Empire, but after all is said and done, they are only allies. Zero Wing has barely any power in the West, while Violet Sword is a titan. It is obvious who holds the advantage on the Western continent. How much help would Netherworld Empire possibly be willing to offer Zero Wing? Moreover, this matter involves Violet Sword's future and prestige. The guild won't budge just because of Netherworld Empire's interference. Violet Sword aims to join the 5 great super guilds, after all. So what if Zero Wing and Netherworld Empire are close allies? And as for Black Flame's plan to negotiate with Violet's sword personally, that's nothing more than fool's talk. Regardless, we have, more or less, completed our goals here. Will you return now? Hermit asked. Of course, I am returning, Long Wuxian growled, sneering at Zero Wing's residence. Violet's sword has already warned the Long family. Since Black Flame wants to be stubborn, he can't blame me for passing his message on to Violet's sword. I can't wait to see his confidence vanish. Long Wuxian then left Stone Forest City and promptly returned to the Western continent. He planned to inform the rest of his family and Violet's sword of everything that had happened. Shortly after Long Wuxian's group left, Silent Wonder received news of Shifeng's reply. You're not really planning to visit Violet's sword, are you, guild leader? Silent Wonder asked as she watched Shifeng's image on the screen before her. Refusing to meet with her fifth uncle might have been fine, but Shifeng was playing with fire by declaring that he'd resolve the matter personally. Zero Wing had become a titan in the east, but its roots were still weak on the western continent. Trying to convince the Zeus Corporation and Violet Sword to abandon their plans would be impossible with the power Zero Wing currently commanded. If this matter weren't handled carefully, Zero Wing could become the Zeus Corporation's enemy, which wouldn't be good news for the guild. I've already committed to it, so naturally, I'll pay Violet Sword a visit, Shifeng declared. And we'll be going in style. Going in style? Silent Wonder could not help but wonder if Shifeng had finally gone mad. They were talking about Violet Sword, and the meeting venue would be in the west. Once the Super Guild learned about today's events, whether or not they reached Violet Sword's headquarters alive would be a problem, not to mention arriving in style. I've heard that Azure's younger generation has been invited to train with Violet Sword. Since that is the case, you should take a break from potion making and focus on training in the Lost Town, Shifeng said, paying Silent Wonder's exasperated expression no mind. We'll show your family and Violet Sword Zero Wing's strength. But there are only a few days left before the family competition. I'm afraid it's too late to start training now, Silent Wonder complained. Her trust in Shifeng's abilities, particularly his ability to help players level up, was unwavering. He had proven this with Dark Rhapsody and Deity Society's main force members. However, the upcoming competition wouldn't be in the form of a standard duel between players. Rather, it would be a competition of combat standards and techniques. The Azure Chamber of Commerce considered weapons and equipment to be external strength. The chamber was powerful enough that acquiring the best items was only a matter of time. Hence, Azure didn't need its younger members to rely on items, but their potential. However, one couldn't just improve their combat standards and combat techniques in a short time. They would have to train arduously for long periods. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU now, there were only 6 days left until the family competition. Seeking a qualitative transformation within such a short time was simply unrealistic. Moreover, while her combat talent was outstanding among Azure's younger generation, she was nowhere close to a match for the top geniuses that devoted themselves to combat. From what she had learned during the previous competition in Demonstone Town, 2 of the younger generation were already close to the domain realm. One individual had already reached the domain realm. In contrast, she had only reached the half-step void realm standard. There was no way she could defeat those geniuses. I know, but beggars can't be choosers. Besides, combat comes in various forms, Shifeng said, realizing Silent Wonder's concerns. In any case, just make your way here. I've already given you access to the Lost Town. You can head to the residence to purchase a transfer scroll. Alright, I'll leave immediately, Silent Wonder agreed. Since Shifeng was so confident, she had no choice but to follow his wishes. She had grown massively during her stay with Zero Wing, and she couldn't possibly sully the guild's name. Following which, she left the Candlelight trading firm and made her way to Zero Wing's residence. Chapter 2597, Changes to the Lost Town, Zero Wing's residence. With a flash of light, Silent Wonder arrived in the residence's plaza, looking worried. She was already at the half-step Void Realm standard, and crossing that barrier soon was entirely possible. A single flash of inspiration is all she would need, especially in her current state. She had already refined her control and pushed her 5 senses to their limits. Making a breakthrough in a single battle was likely. Even if she did, however, she'd, at most, reach the Void Realm before the family competition began. Her combat standards still wouldn't compare to Azure's combat geniuses. Thus, she struggled to understand why Shifeng suddenly wanted her to train in the Lost Town. This wasn't her first visit to the town, and she was aware of the Extraordinary Tower's astounding effects. The tower was the very reason she had reached the Truth Realm, although reaching the Ascension Realm was still a major challenge for her. In fact, reaching the Ascension Realm would be much harder than reaching the Void Realm. This place. Before she had even exited the teleportation array, however, the scenery dumbfounded Silent Wonder. Many of Zero Wing's members fought translucent phantom clones both within and outside of the residence. Their battles were fierce, and some even met their demise. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members watching from the side seemed envious. However, what truly surprised Silent Wonder was the incredibly low mana density within the Lost Town. She couldn't even sense the flow of mana around her. Conversely, the mana within her felt far more apparent than usual. She also found it easier to manipulate. Moreover, her mind didn't feel clogged in the Lost Town like it did in most mana-deficient environments. She knew exactly how valuable such an environment was. The various powers Tier 3 experts were all busy, desperately hunting for methods to unlock their mana bodies effectively, but perceiving the mana within their bodies was incredibly difficult, let alone manipulate it. The Lost Town's environment made it easier for players to notice their own mana. Naturally, this would be immensely helpful as they worked to unlock their mana body's potential. Even so, Silent Wonder shook her head, returning to her prior thoughts. While the Lost Town's training environment had improved, she still only had 6 days left. Since travel to the Western continent would require a full day, she only had 5 days to train. Even in such a useful environment, trying to unlock her mana body in 5 days was asking for the impossible. When Silent Wonder entered the Extraordinary Tower, however, she was shocked again. If the Lost Town were a precious training ground, the Extraordinary Tower was sacred, especially to players trying to increase their mana control. In the tower, she could sense the various mana elements around her and their movement patterns. It felt like nowhere else in God's domain. What do you think? Do you think you can unlock your mana body's full potential before the family competition now? Shifeng asked as he approached Silent Wonder, smiling when he saw her dazed expression. God's domain offered a variety of ways to increase one's combat power, particularly after players reached Tier 3. The benefits Tier 3 players could gain by improving their mana control were in no way lesser than what they could gain by training their combat standards. I can train here regularly? Silent Wonder asked. This wasn't the first time she had stood in the tower, but it had changed drastically. She found it truly hard to believe that she could spend all her time training in such a sacred place. This environment was astonishing, and it had to come at a high price. Of course, Shifeng confirmed, nodding. He understood Silent Wonder's concerns, and maintaining the Extraordinary Tower was costly. After activating the Extraordinary Tower's 3rd floor, he had to spend 20,000 magic crystals per day to keep the 3rd floor's divine runes active. No first-rate guild could afford the expense, but it wouldn't be a problem for Zero Wing. Zero Wing was more than capable of keeping the Extraordinary Tower running at full power every day. Although I can't make any promises, I should have a high chance of succeeding before the competition, Silent Wonder said after giving the matter some thought. However, are you sure you won't reconsider visiting Violet Sword, guild leader? Violet Sword is the only one harassing my family on the surface, but it's backed by the Zeus Corporation in this. If the situation isn't handled carefully, our guild might not be allowed on the Western continent anymore. Thanks to her experiments and the ancient potion Shifeng had given her, she had unlocked over 30% of her mana body. If she focused on training in the Extraordinary Tower, reaching 100% within 5 days was definitely plausible. However, the family competition was a small matter. The Zeus Corporation was the real problem. The West's guilds under the Zeus Corporation's control weren't limited to the Azure Chamber of Commerce and Violet Sword. The corporation had significant shares in a few adventurer alliances, as well. Even without Violet Sword strength, Zeus could easily destroy a superpower in the West by simply issuing a bounty. Meanwhile, most of Zero Wing's power lay in Cold Spring Forest. The guild had far less influence outside of the neutral map. There were also quite a few superpowers targeting Zero Wing in the East, not to mention the West. As long as you can do it, it's fine. Don't worry about the Zeus Corporation. If they really want to fight in the end, I don't mind giving them one, Shifeng said, brimming with confidence in his guild. That's right. If the Zeus Corporation goes too far, we'll prove that Zero Wing isn't to be trifled with. Aqua Rose commented as she approached. That's why you don't have to worry about anything, Wonder. Just focus on unlocking your mana body. You mustn't let those bastards look down on Zero Wing. Silent Wonder was touched by her companion's assurances, although their comments still rendered her speechless. It was enough of a problem that Shifeng, Zero Wing's guild leader, liked to cause trouble, but now, Aqua Rose had picked up the habit. They were talking about one of the top 10 corporations in the entire world, not an opponent to be casually provoked. After Shifeng gave Silent Wonder some tips to unlock her mana body, he sent Aqua Rose and the other guild members with fully unlocked mana bodies to Zero Wing's residence. He then began to plan the raid on the Demon Wolf Den that housed the medium teleportation gate. Once they secured it, Zero Wing would have another open path to travel between the two main continents. Some time later, 12 players gathered in the residence's spacious plaza. Although there weren't many of them, the collective mana they radiated substantially increased the mana density in the plaza. Guild leader, everyone's here, but I'm afraid that raiding the Demon Wolf Den you mentioned will be difficult with just 12 of us and those personal guards, Aqua Rose said. For the various superpowers, having 12 Tier 3 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies and several dozen Tier 3 personal guards was definitely something to be proud of. God's domain's powers would even consider the force nearly invincible, but they were about to face the monsters in the Demon Wolf Den Shifeng targeted. According to Fire Dance's scouting reports, the Demon Wolf Den was home to more than 50,000 monsters, with level 120 lords being the weakest among them. Many of these monsters were even ordinary Grand Lords and Grand Lords with special bloodlines. Moreover, the den had a particularly severe environment. Even Fire Dance, who had already unlocked her mana body's full potential, had nearly lost her life during her scouting mission. It would agree with you, but don't we still have a Tier 4 personal guard? Shifeng countered, chuckling as he gestured to the fully armed Versailles behind him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Him. But his level, Aqua Rose only felt concern when she looked at the elderly NPC. Versailles might have an imposing aura, but she couldn't help the feeling that he would be unreliable. While Tier 4 NPCs were very powerful, Versailles was only a secret silver guard. At best, he could hold his ground against an ordinary mythic monster of the same level, but the old man was only level 112, which was even lower than the gathered players. How was he supposed to help them fight level 120 plus mythic monsters or Grand Lord ranked mutated demon wolves that rivaled mythic monsters? The rest of the team worried, as well. They could now afford to risk their personal guards' lives, but resurrecting a fallen guard would still require the precious water of life. It wouldn't be a laughing matter if all of these personal guards fell in battle. Let's go. You'll understand when the time comes, Shifeng dismissed the matter, still chuckling. He then led the team to the Demon Wolf Denver. Meanwhile, on the western continent, Long Wuxiang had returned to the Azure Chamber of Commerce's residence and relayed Shifeng's message to his family's elders and grand elders. Chapter 2598, Clever Use of Personal Guards. Winter Empire, Winter City, Azure Chamber of Commerce's residence. The Long family's elders and grand elders sat within a luxurious, top-floor meeting room, all wearing solemn expressions. If a Tier 3 player entered the room, they'd shudder with fear upon sensing these individuals' chilly auras. What arrogance! Zero Wing is too full of itself. That's right. It is simply responsible for a few achievements in the East, yet it assumes it can stand on the same level as Violet Sword in the West. It's ridiculous. Zero Wing wants to negotiate with Violet Sword? Does the guild think it rules the Western continent? The Long family's elders and grand elders were furious when they heard Long Wuxiang's report. They might have understood if Zero Wing had only refused to let Silent Wonder go. They all knew that the guild must have invested a lot of resources in the girl's development, and according to Long Wuxiang's report, she was very close to becoming a Grandmaster alchemist. The importance of a Grandmaster alchemist to a guild went without saying. A single Grandmaster could be responsible for an entire guild's prosperity. The best potions currently on the market were master rank. Obtaining a Grandmaster potion was unthinkable at this stage of the game. Any random Grandmaster potion would be immensely useful, and if a guild could mass-produce such potions, that guild would have an unimaginable advantage. Hence, they would have understood if Zero Wing had tried to fight for her. However, Shi Feng hadn't stopped with a refusal to hand Silent Wonder over. He had also declared that Zero Wing would handle the situation, cutting Azure out. It was no more than calling them all incompetent. Since Zero Wing has had made the promise, we'll wash our hands of this matter for now. Once Zero Wing embarrasses itself, it will learn when to take a step back, the keen-witted, middle-aged man in the seat of honor said. But what are Wonder's thoughts on this, old five? Wonder is quite hesitant, big bro, but once Zero Wing embarrasses itself, I doubt she'll sit by and watch her guild and family fall into ruin. I am sure she'll head to Violet Sword to continue her development, Long Wuxiang surmised after giving the matter some thought. That makes things simple. All we need to do is let things progress. While Zero Wing might be powerful enough to cause waves on the eastern continent, it can do nothing in the west. I realize that we don't wish to tie our family's elites to the Zeus Corporation. The company has chosen to use us as an example to unify the powers under its command. We have no way out of this mess, the clever man said, sighing. The elders and grand elders in the room fell silent. The Long family had become Azure's leading family and enjoyed untold glory on the surface, but in truth, it faced increasing pressure. If the Long family could not continue to grow stronger, only an endless abyss would await them in the end. After all, the Zeus Corporation only supported the Azure Chamber of Commerce. It didn't care who was in charge. As the clever man had said, Zero Wing couldn't accomplish anything on the Western continent. All the Long family needed to do was sit back and watch the show. While the Long family's elders met, Shi Feng and his party finally reached the dangerous canyon within the East's Demon Wolf mountain range after some time traveling on their flying mounts. The canyon was full of level 120+ demon wolves. Quite a few Grand Lord-ranked mutated Crimson Demon Wolves and three-headed Demon Wolves rested on the canyon's broken cliffs, and two 20-meter-tall, mythic-ranked three-eyed Ice Demon Wolves rested before a cave entrance, both radiating powerful, frosty auras. Ice Demon Wolf, demonic creature, High Lord, level 123 HP 63,000/63,000,000, three-headed Demon Wolf, demonic creature, Grand Lord, level 124 HP 540,000/540,000,000, mutated Crimson Demon Wolf, demonic creature, Grand Lord, level 125 HP 1-200,000/1-200,000,000, three-eyed Ice Demon Wolf, demonic creature, mythic, level 127 HP 3,100,000/3,100,000,000. When they saw the countless monsters, Zero Wing's members gasped. They had already learned about the incredible number of extremely powerful demon wolves in the canyon from Fire Dance's report. Still, they couldn't help but shudder upon seeing the monsters for themselves. This looked like more of a demon wolf city than a canyon. Even a team with over 5,000 level 120, tier 3 players would struggle to raid this demon wolf den, much less their team of 12 and several dozen tier 3 personal guards. With just a glance, they counted more than 300 three-headed demon wolves and mutated crimson demon wolves, and the Grand Lords guarded every entrance into the canyon. 2 three-headed ice demon wolves also stood guard at the mouth of the cave. The ice-type mana the 2 level 126 mythic monsters radiated was no laughing matter, and since all of the team's players had fully unlocked their mana bodies, they could sense how much mana the 2 monsters radiated. They felt as if they were staring at 2 gigantic mountains, not just mythic monsters. Enveloped in such overwhelming ice-type mana, manipulating the ambient mana would be impossible. Although they could use their own mana in combat, their mana would be suppressed, and they wouldn't be able to exhibit their skills and spells' full power. Guild leader, must we really clear out these demon wolves? Kola asked. He had wanted to test his new equipment, but he couldn't help his nervous gulp when he saw the demon wolves here. Even if we rely on the personal guards during the fight, I doubt we'll have an easy time. These demon wolves must be dealt with, but we're not relying on the personal guards. We'll be doing the cleaning ourselves, Shifeng said, shaking his head. We will? His guild leader's plan surprised Kola. Even working with their personal guards, they'd still have a difficult time defeating these demon wolves, yet Shifeng informed them that they'd take out the monsters on their own. This had to be a joke. Emichim. The demon wolves here are special. Not only are there so many, and they're strong, but they also have high combat standards. Moreover, this environment's mana suppression is quite powerful, which makes using skills and spells incredibly difficult. Players will have to rely on their combat techniques here. Consider this another training ground. From today on, we'll train here, Shifeng said, nodding. Once you run out of stamina and concentration, return to training in the Extraordinary Tower and recuperate. When you've rested, return here. Clearing this area will be our main task for the next few days. He had wanted to activate the medium teleportation point, boosting Zero Wing's development speed, as soon as possible. However, Shifeng's most recent battle on the Extraordinary Tower's second floor had made one thing clear: the realms of truth weren't as simple as he had initially assumed. He had thought he had mastered a considerable portion of the realms of truth's principles, but in reality, he only knew the tip of the iceberg. He had never once truly exhibited the realms of truth's full potential during combat. Meanwhile, Tier 3 was only a transition period for true powerhouses. The difference between their strength and that of ordinary experts would become more prominent as players reached level 120 and began to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quests. While Zero Wing had plenty of expert players, very few qualified to be called peak experts, and even fewer were apex experts that had reached the domain realm. Although powerful weapons, equipment, and bloodlines would be quite helpful during players' Tier 4 promotion quests, their combat standards would be the deciding factor between completing the quest or not. This would be particularly true of players who challenged their Tier 4 promotion quests at a low level. They'd face much higher combat standard requirements than if they waited. Since the Zeus Corporation was taking measures to consolidate its power, it was obvious that the various superpowers and major corporations had realized the significance of Tier 4. As a result, they were pooling their resources to nurture their peak and apex experts in preparation for their Tier 4 promotion quests. In the past, the various superpowers had only realized how important Tier 4 was after a few apex experts had completed their promotion quests. However, due to the butterfly effect Shifeng had caused, the superpowers now focused on training their high-tiered experts, rather than rely on Zerg tactics as they had in his past life. Hence, improving Zero Wing members' combat standards was of the utmost importance. If the various superpowers really were preparing their experts for the Tier 4 promotion quests, Zero Wing would be overpowered if it remained passive. Aside from normal training, life or death battles with monsters was an absolute must if players wanted to grow stronger. Only by risking their lives in battle could players unlock more of their potential. Now that Zero Wing had the Extraordinary Tower and the Demon Wolf Mountain Range's special region in its grasp, he had to take advantage of these benefits. In that case, Guild Leader, why did we bring all of these personal guards? Aqua Rose asked, confused. It had taken a lot of manpower to secure so many powerful personal guards, yet Shifeng didn't intend to use them in the fight. She didn't understand what he was trying to accomplish. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, they're here to watch us fight and help during crucial moments, saving our lives, Shifeng seriously explained. His statement left the rest of his team speechless. Was this the right way to use personal guards? These demon wolves were so powerful. Even if they fought alongside their personal guards, victory wasn't guaranteed, so how were these NPCs supposed to protect them? Since there are no more questions, let's begin our training. Shifeng declared, slashing killing ray through the empty air before him and sending a lightning bolt at a group of a dozen or so demon wolves. The attack startled over 1,000 nearby monsters, and the demon wolves turned to glare at Shifeng's group, the rage in their eyes making Kola and the others shiver. Before the team could react, the 1,000 or so monsters charged toward them. Oh. Chapter 2599. True Tier 4 Kola and the others grew nervous as the demon wolves swarmed. Most of the monsters were only High Lord ranked ice demon wolves, but with their high levels, their basic attributes could rival that of level 115 Great Lords. In other words, they had to face more than 1,000 Great Lords of the same level simultaneously, and every one of these monsters had the combat standards to reach the trial tower's 3rd floor. Moreover, quite a few three-headed demon wolves ran with this pack. These monsters moved like a powerful tsunami that could wipe out anything in its path. As the demon wolves moved closer, and Zero Wings members prepared for battle, the pack split into two and surrounded the team. Completing the encirclement, the ice demon wolves opened a path for their Grand Lord-ranked brethren, allowing the three-headed demon wolves to move to the front. How intelligent are these monsters? Kola's eyes nearly fell from their sockets. These demon wolves moved more like a well-trained army than a bunch of demonic creatures, and this army had been specifically trained to target players. Before Kola and the others could react, one of the three-headed demon wolves charged forth. Over 100 ice demon wolves followed the Grand Lord, providing cover. Kola immediately responded by charging forward and using Justice Roar on the three-headed demon wolf. Just as the blinding light radiated from Kola, before he could land an attack, however, a playful look flashed in the Grand Lord's eyes, confusing the Guardian Knight. Two ice demon wolves then appeared from behind the Grand Lord, ramming their heads into Kola. Pung! The ice demon wolves bounced off Kola's armor, flying back, and the MT's assault came to a grinding halt. Before Kola could regain his stance, the three-headed demon wolf's paw descended toward him, enveloped in an ink-black glow. Don't you dare think I'm that easy to kill. Kola roared, reacting quickly and raising his shield to block the attack. The instant he raised his shield, however, he was dumbfounded. This time, 3 more ice demon wolves appeared from the Grand Lord's sides. A two-pronged assault. Despite the fact that demonic creatures shouldn't possess much intellect, these demon wolves knew how to work together to launch complicated assaults. Moreover, their coordination was simply perfect. They had executed their strategy with flawless timing. Not even players could pull off such a tactic. It was as if these demon wolves had practiced relentlessly to deal with him specifically. Just as Kola thought all hope was lost, an ice wall rose up around him. Boom! The wall shook violently when the three-headed demon wolf and 3 ice demon wolves collided with it, but it held steady. Stunned, Aqua rose and the others glanced toward the origin of the ice wall's mana. None of them had been able to react to the demon wolves' attacks in time to save Kola, but someone had cast ice wall around the MT just before the 4 monsters' attack landed. The ice wall was only a tier 2 spell, yet it had even stopped the Grand Lord-ranked 3-headed demon wolf. It was unbelievable. Locating the caster, the team stared at Versailles, the elderly man behind Shifeng. However, to their surprise, there wasn't a magic array around the NPC or the crystalline staff he wielded, yet he had created the ice wall. When players cast spells, they first needed to form the necessary magic array. Even instantaneous spells required arrays to cast, and all magic arrays took time to form. Although instantaneous spells arrays manifested much faster, time was still needed for their completion. Versailles, however, had cast the tier 2 ice wall without any magic arrays as if the spell had taken shape with a thought. Moreover, his ice wall was astonishingly powerful. Enraged, the three-headed demon wolf glared at Versailles. All three of the Grand Lord's heads opened their maws, and a twofold magic array began to form beneath the monster's feet. After a brief pause, the three wolf heads spat a frightening storm, resembling a hurricane, which threatened to devour everyone in the area. No one had any time to dodge the attack. In response, Versailles lifted his free hand and summoned a rock wall, isolating them from the three-headed demon wolf. The powerful storm attack didn't even shake the rock wall. Even after exhausting its energy, the storm only cleaned the wall of loose dirt. Cola and the others were flabbergasted. That attack had undoubtedly been a Tier 3 curse. Including the fact that the three-headed demon wolf was a level 124 Grand Lord, the attack rivaled a full-powered hit from a level 120 mythic monster, yet Versailles had effortlessly blocked it. Meanwhile, the Tier 4 NPC summoned stone spikes beneath the other two three-headed demon wolves, who were preparing a long-range ambush, and broke the other Grand Lord's concentration. A Tier 4 NPC is actually this strong? Aqua Rose was utterly baffled as she watched. She had thought Sherfone was overestimating Versailles, who was only a level 112 Secret Silver Guard. He might be a Tier 4 NPC, but fighting this formidable demon wolf army should still give him some trouble. But after witnessing Versailles' performance, she understood why Sherfone thought so highly of the elderly NPC. Versailles had instantly cast 3 spells to interrupt the 3 Grand Lords' attacks. In other words, he could triple instant cast. Moreover, all 3 of his spells were incredibly powerful, despite their low tier. Versailles was on a completely different level than the Tier 4 NPCs she had encountered before. Everyone, be more careful. Although we have Versailles protection, it isn't foolproof. These demon wolves are extraordinary. Not only are they incomparably cunning, but they also know how to take advantage of all sorts of opportunities. You need to be vigilant at all times, Sherfone warned, chuckling when he saw his teammates' surprise. Any NPC that could reach Tier 4 was a dragon among men. These individuals could protect entire cities without help. How could any of them possibly be weak? Moreover, humans at Tier 4 were completely different from monsters at the same tier. Humans needed to rely on techniques and mana control to complete their Tier 4 promotion quests, but monsters could reach the tier as long as they and their bloodline were sufficiently powerful. Hence, even if a Tier 4 human NPC was slightly lower leveled than a Tier 4 monster, they could rely on their superior techniques to fill the gap. Furthermore, a Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard's growth rate was by no means lacking. Shifeng's warning snapped everyone from their stupor, and a passionate flame began to bum in their eyes. The demon wolves before them were indeed extraordinary. That was clear after witnessing Cola's brief battle. Not only could these monsters chain their attacks, but they also knew how to target players' weak points. Most importantly, this wasn't a training session, but a life-threatening battle where they could exhibit their full potential. This was a battlefield that all expert players dreamed of. The 11 team members immediately cleared their minds and focused on the fight before them. Although their attention was on the demon wolves in front of them, they kept an eye on the monsters around them, as well. Sherfone wasn't idle either. He immediately charged at 2 of the 3-headed demon wolves in the distance, trying to integrate his basic combat techniques in his every movement. Trying to use combat techniques with every action was incredibly difficult. When he had fought the swordsman on the extraordinary tower's second-floor staircase, he hadn't spared any attention or time for conducting such experiments. The tower had reduced his physique to that of a Tier 1 player, and he had barely been able to keep up with the second-floor's swordsman as it was. If he had tried to combine combat techniques with his movements, his efforts would have yielded the opposite effect. Fortunately, these demon wolves were the perfect practice targets. Not only did they target players' weak points, but he could also maintain his Tier 3 physique during the fight. He would have more than enough energy to spare for practicing his combat technique integration. Sherfone proceeded to engage in a bitter battle with the 2 3-headed demon wolves and several hundred nearby ice demon wolves. Whenever he focused his attacks on the Grand Lords, the ice demon wolves pounced to intercept him. Some of the High Lords even used the chance to launch surprise attacks, preventing Shifeng from using any of his skills or spells. He could only rely on combat techniques, which were faster, to defend himself. As the battle progressed, Shifeng grew increasingly familiar with using basic combat techniques in combat. Initially, he had only been able to execute a basic combat technique perfectly once every dozen or so moves, but he gradually reduced that to 5 or 6 moves. As he did, his fight against the three-headed demon wolves became easier. Now, even his normal attacks were stronger than the level 124 Grand Lords. In fact, Shifeng began to gain the advantage against the 2 three-headed demon wolves and several hundred ice demon wolves as the battle continued. Aqua Rose and the others also improved with flying speed. At first, their fight with the demon wolves had been arduous, and Versailles had had to rescue them from time to time. However, they began to learn how to use their environment, and now, all of their movements resembled combat techniques. The team continued to train for 5 consecutive days. During that time, they traveled between the Demon Wolf Den and the Extraordinary Tower. Not only had all of the team members reached the Ascension Realm standard in the end, but Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, and Aqua Rose had also created customized bronze combat techniques. Everyone had also leveled with astonishing speed. The Demon Wolf Den's monsters didn't drop loot, but they did grant abundant EXP. In addition, Shifeng had sent the personal guards to clear out a portion of the den while everyone trained. As a result, the team members had leveled twice during the past 5 days. Unfortunately, due to the demon god, Atlok's soul curse, Shifeng had lost one of the 2 levels he had earned. Hence, he had only reached level 118. Sure enough, my combat power has risen considerably after integrating basic combat techniques with my movements. Overall, both my offense and defense have improved. If I can do the same with advanced combat techniques, I might be able to transcend tiers, Shifeng thought as he fought 3 three-headed demon wolves simultaneously. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After 5 days of frantic training, he had finally merged basic combat techniques with his movements. Now, he could effortlessly execute a basic combat technique with every action. As a result, his strength had undergone a qualitative transformation, and he could now pass the 90th step on the Extraordinary Tower's second-floor staircase. However, he still hit a roadblock on the 96th step during his fight with 3 black swordsmen. If he wished to defeat them, he'd have to become as powerful as the black swordsmen, integrating advanced combat techniques in his movements. Unfortunately, the feat was too difficult to accomplish as he was. Advanced combat techniques consumed a lot more stamina and concentration than basic combat techniques. They were also far more complex. Executing an advanced combat technique normally was already a challenge. Trying to use one with every action was beyond Shifeng right now. Guild leader, we're almost out of time. If we don't hurry to the Western continent now, Wonder won't make it for the family competition, Aqua Rose announced when she realized Shifeng was engrossed in his fight. It's already time? Shifeng felt as if time had passed too quickly. Alright, let's get ready to return, then. Chapter 2600, Monstrous Upstarts West Continent, Frost Hills, Azure City. As a guild city in a level 90 neutral map, Azure City played a transitional role for many of the Winter Empire's players as they prepared to travel to level 100+ maps. Including the fact that the city's ruling guild, the Azure Chamber of Commerce, was one of trade and business, the city had become the largest trade hub in the Empire. Many players and powers traveled to Azure City on business, and the city enjoyed easily over 5 million visitors per day. A long line of players had formed at the city gates, waiting to enter, and from time to time, they saw gigantic flying mounts pass overhead, making the ordinary players in line jealous. Azure City is amazing. I've never seen flying mounts in other guild cities, yet so many have passed by while I've been in line. An independent, level 103 berserker exclaimed as he watched a 2-headed vulture soar past. There are usually quite a few flying mounts coming and going from Azure City every day, but there seem to be far more today. I've heard that Azure is hosting the competition for its younger generation and has invited several powers to watch. I assume those flying mounts belong to the invited powers' upper echelons, a level 108 youth wearing a guild emblem explained. A competition among Azure's younger generation? The comment confused the berserker. What's so great about that? Isn't it just a PvP tournament between a bunch of unknown upstarts? It's not even a competition between peak experts, yet all of these powers are attending with such fanfare. I take it you don't know much about Azure. Azure is a veteran guild run by multiple families. Its main shareholders make their living through virtual reality games. Unlike the various superpowers experts, who generally start training only after turning 15 or 16, Azure's younger generation start their training during childhood. They're all astonishingly strong, far stronger than the various superpowers' ordinary experts. Some of them are even stronger than the superpowers' peak experts, the elementalist youth explained, rolling his eyes. Moreover, this competition revolves around combat standards and techniques. You can learn plenty just by watching the fight. Why else would Azure's partnered powers bother showing up? I bet most of them have brought their younger talents to watch, as well. I heard that this year is going to be extraordinary. Many of Azure's younger members have been training with Violet Sword. A few days ago, Violet Sword even announced that someone from Azure's younger generation fought Wildfighter, one of the vice commanders for the Chamber's strongest trump card, to a standstill. Violet Sword's upper echelons were stunned, a level 110, tier 3 swordsman wearing a guild emblem similar to the elementalist youth said. Fought Wildfighter to a standstill? Who are you trying to fool? Wildfighter is one of the top 30 players on the God's Domain Experts list. The independent berserker protested, skeptical. Wildfighter has been famous for over a decade and is a publicly acknowledged monster. I've heard that Wildfighter can hold his ground against a level 110 mythic monster by himself. How could one of Azure's youngsters possibly fight him to a standstill? Almost every berserker player on the western continent knew about Wildfighter. For many berserkers, he was a goal and idol. Naturally, this level 103 berserker was no exception. This is insider information. One of my friends is a core member in Violet Sword, the level 110 swordsman argued. I wish I could watch the competition, too. Who knows? It might give me an idea of how to grow stronger. One-on-one duels between peak experts were rare, and even when they happened, the various superpowers kept a tight lid on the matter. Ordinary players only got to watch peak experts in action when the various major powers or superpowers waged war against each other. However, large-scale battles weren't as useful when trying to improve one's combat standards. Peak experts typically relied on their incredibly high basic attributes to overwhelm their opponents. They rarely used complex techniques in battle. When peak experts met on the battlefield, their fights were rarely one-on-one. To put it simply, opportunities to watch two peak experts rely on techniques in a duel were invaluable. Many players spent big bucks to spectate. While these several players chatted amongst themselves, a sharp cry rang through the air, echoing throughout the area. Everyone turned to find the source of this cry, spotting a giant eagle with a wingspan of over 20 meters. The bird of prey was shrouded in a black fog as it drew closer to Azure City. Crap! That's Violet Sword's Netherflame Eagle. Violet Sword is attending the competition, too? What a powerful aura! That eagle is nearly as strong as a Grand Lord. Nearly? I've heard that the Netherflame Eagle can take down Grand Lords of the same level. Very few flying mounts in the East are as powerful. Awe flashed in everyone's eyes as they spoke about the flying mount above. A flying mount that rivaled Grand Lords of the same level was incredibly useful. As long as players had high enough DPS and that flying mount, killing Grand Lords in the fields with a small team was entirely possible. Furthermore, the Netherflame Eagle was fast enough to save players plenty of travel time. As everyone discussed the flying mount, the Netherflame Eagle blurred as it flew to Azure's residence within the city. When the massive flying mount landed, over a dozen people jumped off its back. They were all level 111, except for the white-haired old man that remained seated. He had already reached level 112. Violet Sword has taught you everything you need to know. I hope you won't disgrace the guild's good name. If you fail, you'd better not mention that I taught you. You won't get a second chance to train with Violet Sword either. The white-haired elder indifferently warned his travel companions. Don't worry, Instructor Tori. We'll show the Long family how foolish they've been to decline your training, a silver-eyed, blue-haired youth with a great sword slung across his back respectfully promised. Good. I will be waiting in Holy Flame City. Do not disappoint your elders or me, the white-haired elder said, nodding. His gaze held a hint of warmth as he looked down at the blue-haired boy. Atop his netherflame eagle, the white-haired elder left the city. Meanwhile, the blue-haired youth's group immediately attracted the attention of Azure's members and upper echelons. Fifth uncle, they've clearly grown a lot stronger during their training, especially Solitary Frost. I still can't believe he fought Wildfighter to a standstill. I've also heard that he has a favorable view of Yan Shaoqian, and she has made great progress with her training. They won't be easy opponents, Burning Owl cautioned, astonished as he watched the group of youths in the middle of the plaza. Burning Owl had thought he had a chance of securing one of the top 3 positions in the upcoming competition, but after seeing the other family's experts return from their training with Violet Sword, his confidence started to waver. Let's hope Silk Moon has improved as well. Otherwise, our family might struggle to rank among the top 3, Long Wushang agreed, frowning. The Long family didn't expect to earn first place in this competition. The gap between their younger members' strength and the other family's participants was simply too large. Solitary Frost, in particular, was on an entirely different level, and many of the others had already reached the Void Realm. Silk Moon, the Long family's most talented combat player among the Long family's younger generation, was the family's last hope. Just as Solitary Frost's group was about to leave the plaza, and the crowd was about to disperse, everyone heard a loud humming from above the city, causing quite the commotion. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what's that sound? Is some kind of special event about to happen in Azure City? Everyone was curious about the humming sound, with many players emerging from hotels and bars to get a better look at its source. When everyone found the sound's origin, however, they were all dumbfounded. 100-meter-long, steel behemoth flew toward the city as they watched. What's going on? Is that a flying ship? Chapter 2601, Zero Wings Arrival. Competition begins. The flying ship's arrival startled Azure City's players. Many of the powers that had come to watch Azure Chamber of Commerce's competition were stunned. Aside from how rare flying ships were in God's domain, its colossal size was shocking enough. Flying mounts, which most players thought were gigantic, looked like children in comparison. Which power owns that flying ship? Doesn't showing up like this seem like grandstanding? Has a super guild come to watch the competition? Azure City's players fell into heated discussions as they watched the rapidly approaching flying ship. The various powers members, who had come to spectate Azure's competition, were especially taken aback. Everyone wanted to know who owned the airborne vessel. Flying Mount's aerial combat power was nothing compared to that of a flying ship. Such a vessel was also stronger than flying mounts in other aspects. A flying ship could instantly elevate any ordinary guild standing in God's domain. The guild's main force might even develop as quickly as the main force from a first-rate guild. While everyone discussed the ship's arrival, the flying ship drifted to a stop above the plaza in Azure's residence. When it landed, everyone eagerly stared at the ship's hatch, overcome with curiosity. Several cloaked players, all of whom had concealed their information and appearances, disembarked. One woman, however, wasn't wearing a black cloak. Rather, she wore luxurious, dark blue mage robes and instantly became the center of attention in the plaza. Players didn't just stare because of her powerful aura. Everyone was also astonished that she had actually reached level 113. She was the highest leveled player they had ever seen. The white-haired elder from Violet Sword had already reached level 112, yet this woman surpassed him by 1 level. She was obviously an extraordinary expert, Silent Wonder? Isn't she from the Long family, a level 110, tier 3 ranger, who had come to watch the competition, wondered when he saw her statistics. Since when did the Long family have a relationship with such an astounding power? To think that, aside from the Zeus Corporation, the Long family has the support of such a powerful entity. It's no wonder why the Long family isn't afraid of the Zeus Corporation. The various spectating powers' upper echelons were surprised when they saw Silent Wonder. They had never considered that the Long family would have such a powerful foundation. For a time, these upper echelons reconsidered their views of the Long family. What grandeur! They actually arrived in a flying ship. Long Wuxiang, who watched from within Azure's residence, clicked his tongue as Zero Wings members emerged from the Crimson Dragon flying ship. The Crimson Dragon flying ship was Zero Wings' symbol in the east, just as the Netherflame Eagle was Violet Swords. Only, since information between the two main continents was restricted, few powers in the west knew about the flying ship. Isn't this great, fifth uncle? At the very least, our momentum isn't any slower than the others, Burning Owl said, smiling. Violet Sword was too overbearingly famous. The fact that the Super Guild had escorted Solitary Frost's group to Azure City atop a Netherflame Eagle was enough to sway Azure's neutral elders and grand elders. Some had even initiated negotiations with Solitary Frost's and his companions' families. What's the point of this meaningless display now? Actions speak louder than words, in the end. Long Wuxiang disdainfully dismissed. Zero Wing might have a lot of influence on the eastern continent, but the same couldn't be said in the west. Meanwhile, the Azure Chamber of Commerce's main area of development lay in the west, which was also the Zeus Corporation's home ground. Zero Wing couldn't do anything to help Azure. Little Qian, your opponent has finally arrived, a level 111, tier 3 female assassin announced, glancing at Yan Xiaoqian. By the looks of it, she's grown a lot stronger. You have a tough fight against her. A tough fight? Yan Xiaoqian only rolled her eyes. Calmly, she said, her alchemy techniques might be stronger, but she's no match for me in combat. The Long family's only decent fighter is Silk Moon. If she hasn't grown stronger since we last met, taking second place in this competition will be a breeze. Yan Xiaoqian's comment had been firm and without any hint of arrogance. She had said it as if it was just a normal fact. The female assassin didn't argue with her friend. What Yan Xiaoqian had said was true, after all. Their combat standards had considerably improved during their training with Violet Sword, and she had to admit that the veteran Super Guild was impressive. The Azure Chamber of Commerce was no match for Violet Sword when it came to nurturing experts. During Violet Sword's training, Yan Xiaoqian had grown tremendously. Many of Violet Sword's old monsters had even praised her for her talent. Now, she was only half a step away from the domain realm, and many of Violet Sword's old monsters were certain that she'd reach the realm soon. On the other hand, while Silent Wonder was an amazing alchemist, her combat talent was subpar in comparison. She hadn't even reached the Void Realm before the previous competition. Even if Zero Wing were capable and helped Silent Wonder reach the Void Realm since, that wouldn't change anything. Even between Void Realm experts, there was a massive difference in strength. While the female assassin and Yan Xiaoqian conversed, a middle-aged man with a chilling aura and pale complexion approached. This man was Duan Hanshan, the strongest member of the Duan family's second generation. Xiaoqian, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed this time. We just received news that Silk Moon won't be attending the competition for some reason. Nobody can get in touch with her. The entire Long family is panicking over the matter, Duan Hanshan interjected. Silk Moon isn't coming? Doesn't that mean the Long family is finished? The female assassin asked. Silk Moon was the Long family's last hope of securing one of the top 3 positions in this competition. If she had succeeded in earning one of those positions, the Long family would have retained its reputation. However, now that Silk Moon couldn't make it, the Long family had a bleak future ahead. The Long family currently held the right to rule the Azure Chamber of Commerce, but the younger generation would determine the guild's future. If the Long family's successors weren't up to the task, who would trust the family to run Azure. Soon, both the Zeus Corporation and the Chamber's various shareholder families would use the Long family's ineptitude as an excuse to reclaim Azure's ruling rights. That's why all of you need to perform well. We mustn't allow any member of the Long family to take one of the top 3 positions. This isn't just the family's requirement, but the Zeus Corporation's, as well. As long as you succeed, you will all have another opportunity to train with Violet Sword, Duan Hanzhan said seriously. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, top 3. Doesn't that only leave Burning Owl as a threat? The female assassin surmised, turning to look at the distant Burning Owl, who wore an ugly expression. Burning Owl was undoubtedly a peak expert. None of them had been a match for his combat standards in the past, but after training with Violet Sword, the 5 individuals from the various shareholder families had joined the ranks of peak experts. Moreover, they had engaged in live combat against a large number of Violet Sword's peak experts. If Burning Owl was their only opponent, the group had a high chance of securing all 3 top positions in this competition. Once they succeeded, they'd all be able to return to Violet Sword, making this an incredibly valuable opportunity. Their training with Violet Sword had cost a lot of manpower and resources, a cost that the Azure Chamber of Commerce couldn't currently afford. If not for the Zeus Corporation's request, Violet Sword wouldn't have bothered training them at all. Time is almost up. Let's head to the arena, Duan Hanzhan said after taking a look at the time. He then led Yan Shaoqian and the female assassin toward the battle arena in the heart of Azure City. Chapter 2602, Stage Struggle, Silent Wonders Decision. Azure City, Battle Arena. With the Azure Chamber of Commerce hosting its annual competition, many of Azure City's players had swarmed the battle arena in hopes of watching the battle. However, Azure had stationed several thousand experts around the building to stop the flood of approaching players. Azure had no intention of allowing uninvited players to view the competition. As the various invited powers entered the battle arena, the uninvited public grew envious. Although Azure City's battle arena was much smaller than the one in Stone Forest City, its interior had been magnificently decorated. Even Shifeng was a little impressed as he entered the building's main lobby. The main lobby had been paved with mana ore, and the instant he stepped inside, the mana he felt was considerably denser than outside. Moreover, artisans had carved all sorts of images into the lobby's walls. These engravings might not seem special to ordinary players, but players who knew combat techniques would easily recognize them. Every engraved image depicted a different combat technique. Of course, these combat techniques were incomplete. Learning techniques from these engravings would be many times more difficult than learning them from complete legacies. It would take an absolute genius to learn anything from these carved walls. From what Shifeng could tell, anyone that mastered these incomplete combat techniques would gain a massive strength boost. Most of these incomplete techniques were advanced rank or higher. Following an NPC, Shifeng's group soon arrived in the largest arena within Azure City's battle arena. The room could easily accommodate over 10,000 spectators, and all of the stages within had been made with mana Oregon. On these stages, players would be able to exhibit extraordinary combat power, making their fights far more interesting. By the time Shifeng's group reached their seats, most had already been filled. The majority of the spectators were either talented newcomers from the various powers or Azure's core members. Excitement filled the air as everyone watched Azure's younger members approach the center stage, one after another. We already know who's taking first place, but I wonder who will earn second place? I think Vice Guild leader Burning Owl from the Long family has a high chance. He's already been acknowledged as the 3rd strongest member of Azure's younger generation. I've also heard that he's recently mastered an advanced footwork technique, so he should have grown significantly stronger. Burning Owl might have been strong before, but times have changed. There's a rumor that quite a few members from the other families have reached the Void Realm. I think Burning Owl will have a hard time claiming one of the top 3 spots. All of the spectators had their guesses of who would secure the competition's second place. Everyone was certain that there were 6 candidates that could vie for the position, and all 6 had reached the Void Realm. However, nobody was certain which of these 6 candidates would succeed. After all, players could gain a massive amount of combat power from a single moment of inspiration once they had reached the Void Realm. Hence, all 6 candidates had a chance of taking second place. While the audience chatted amongst themselves, a middle-aged man in light gray leather armor with 2 long swords across his back took his place on the center stage. This man didn't look very old. At most, he should be in his 40s. His aura wasn't all that intimidating either. On the contrary, his aura was as calm as the surface of a lake on a summer day. When he took the stage, however, the arena fell silent. Crap. He's presiding over the competition this time. The GCPs it cost to watch this competition were really well spent. When the crowd saw the middle-aged man, their eyes glowed with excitement. This man was Sinful Flame, the Azure Chamber of Commerce's strongest member. It was rumored that he could even fight Netherworld Empire's #1 assassin and the commander of mythology's strongest trump card legion to a standstill. He even ranked as one of the top 10 experts on the God's Domain experts list. Sinful Flame rarely appeared in public and generally focused on training for his rematch against Netherworld's assassin and mythology's commander. With such a mythical individual before them, how could the crowd contain their excitement? Furthermore, during Azure's annual competitions, the first-place winner had the privilege of fighting the host. This meant that the audience would get to watch Sinful Flame in action. This was an incredibly rare opportunity. I won't bore you with nonsense. During past competitions, we have chosen 6 members from the first phase to participate in the main event. However, Azure has gained much over the last year. As many as 7 of our members have reached the Void Realm and beyond. Rather than the usual 6, we will choose 8 individuals to participate in the main event this year. Sinful Flame announced, glancing at the youngsters before him. Any of you who wish to challenge yourselves may begin, but because we have quite a few who have reached the Flowing Water Realm, every member may only challenge 2 opponents, instead of the usual 3. Choose wisely. When Sinful Flame finished his opening statement, the central stage split into 8 smaller stages, each with a 60-yard radius. It gave Tier 3 players more than enough room to display their skills. In addition, the same rules applied to every stage. All players' basic attributes would be equalized. This would ensure that the fighters had to rely on their combat standards to win. Once the 8 stages settled in place, Solitary Frost and the other Void Realm or higher experts split up, choosing a stage. The other members from the various families hesitated to approach the 8th stage, however. Solitary Frost's team of 7 clearly had incredibly high combat standards, but the rest of the participating members had only reached the Flowing Water Realm. Challenging these 7 would only result in one outcome: defeat. None of them were foolish enough to waste their 2 challenge opportunities. If they took the 8th stage, however, they'd be forced to face numerous opponents. While they might be able to secure consecutive wins, every battle would expose more of their strength. This, in turn, would reduce their chances of winning. Why isn't anybody taking the 8th stage? Sinful Flame demanded. Aside from the usual rewards the guild has prepared for the top 3 victors, the Zeus Corporation has promised to send the top 8 fighters to train in Violet Sword's magical secret land. You should all cherish this opportunity. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. With that, excitement flashed in the participating players' eyes. Violet Sword occupied a magical secret land that came with a training ground that had survived since ancient times. Although training in this secret land wouldn't be as beneficial as their prior training with Violet Sword, it could help players rapidly improve. If they could spend some time in that secret land, breaking through to the Void Realm would be entirely possible. They might even become an elder in the guild. Suddenly, every one of these players made a mad dash for the 8th stage. Is Second Sister holding back? Burning Owl wondered in confusion as he glanced at Silent Wonder, who remained still even after the announcement. While everyone fought over the final stage, Silent Wonder turned and walked toward the first stage, where Solitary Frost waited. Chapter 2603, Overestimating Oneself? That's Solitary Frost's stage. Why is Silent Wonder going there? She's going to challenge Solitary Frost. Challenge Solitary Frost? Is she insane? The players that had been competing for the 8th stage paused, watching Silent Wonder approach the first stage. They were all curious to see what she planned to do. Second sister? Even Burning Owl was confused as he watched. Even if Silent Wonder wanted to secure one of the top 8 positions, she shouldn't have started with Solitary Frost. Solitary Frost had always been stronger than the rest of Azure's younger generation, and now, after his training with Violet Sword, he was on a completely different level. Anyone that challenged Solitary Frost would only waste one of their opportunities. Yan Xiaoqian was just as astonished as she watched Silent Wonder from her position on the second stage. She might not have been surprised to see the Long family's Silk Moon challenge Solitary Frost, since she would actually have a chance of winning. But why would Silent Wonder challenge that monster of a player? This competition wasn't like the previous alchemy competition. They weren't fighting monsters this time, and superior levels and equipment couldn't help Silent Wonder here. On these 8 stages, everyone's basic attributes would be the same. Players would have to rely on their combat standards and techniques to win. Silent Wonder could never be a match for Solitary Frost in these aspects. Meanwhile, the audience was in an uproar as it watched Silent Wonder. The Long family's elders and grand elders in particular, anxiously sat on the edge of their seats. They had, more or less, given up any hope of securing one of the top 3 spots. They only hoped that Burning Owl could hold 4th place, and Silent Wonder would make it into the top 8. They could, to a certain extent, avoid embarrassment if 2 of their representatives ranked among the top 8 fighters. Whether or not the Long family retained its ruling rights over the Azure Chamber of Commerce would depend on Silent Wonder's obedience and training with Violet Sword. As long as she did, the Zeus Corporation would stop meddling in Azure's affairs, and the family would be safe. And yet, the foolish girl was about to waste one of her challenge opportunities on Solitary Frost. That girl is quite brave, Sinful Flame muttered, praising Silent Wonder as she stepped onto the first stage. Solitary Frost, on the other hand, showed no appreciation for Silent Wonder's courage. Rather, he seemed to look down on her. To challenge me directly, it seems you've improved quite a bit in Zero Wing, Wonder, Solitary Frost said coldly. The selection for the 8 finalists had just begun, yet Silent Wonder had chosen to challenge him now. If she were truly powerful, she would be more than capable of facing off against him in the main event. By choosing him now, she was declaring to every player in the arena that he was an easy opponent. Essentially, she was trying to humiliate him. Emichim. I have indeed improved in Zero Wing, so I'd like to test my limits on you, Silent Wonder honestly replied, nodding. I guess you're serious, then, Solitary Frost reasoned, his anger subsiding as he realized that Silent Wonder wanted to fight him in earnest, not make fun of him. His expression shifted, becoming serious, and he pulled the silver greatsword from its sheath across his back. In that case, show me how much you've grown in your little guild. Thank you. Silent Wonder offered the words of gratitude, knowing Solitary Frost would take her seriously. There's no need for that. I appreciate all true challengers. I hope you won't disappoint me. During my training with Violet Sword, only Yan Xiaoqian withstood a few of my moves. The rest of our generation was too boring and weak to make me work for my victory, Solitary Frost said. By the time Solitary Frost finished his last statement, Sinful Flame had arrived in the center of the stage. Since you both agree, let the match begin, the older man announced after taking a good look at the 2 youngsters. A roar of excitement swept through the spectator stands when the crowd heard Sinful Flame announce the start of the match. They had never thought Solitary Flame would take Silent Wonder's challenge seriously, and they couldn't contain their enthusiasm. And here I thought I'd have to wait until the main event to watch a Solitary Frost and Burning Owl duke it out. Thanks to Silent Wonder, I'll get to watch Solitary Frost in a serious battle now. I wonder how many minutes Silent Wonder will last. Minutes? Aren't you giving her a little too much credit? I doubt even Burning Owl will last more than 10 moves against Solitary Frost. The various powers members had heard plenty about Solitary Frost. Many of them had even come just to see how powerful the boy, who had fought the famous Wildfighter to a standstill, was. Wildfighter was a legend among berserkers, and getting a chance to see such an individual in action was almost impossible. However, if Solitary Frost fought with all he had, they could get a feel for how strong Wildfighter was. Once Sinful Flame had initiated the match on the first stage, Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder moved to their designated positions and prepared for battle. I've heard that Yan Xiaoqian used to consider you a rival. In that case, I'll use the same move that defeated her against you. I hope you're ready. Solitary Frost wanted Silent Wonder, who stood 40 yards away. Suddenly, the young man split into 4 clones of himself. All 4 figures were identical and radiated similar auras, making them impossible to tell apart. The doppelgangers then split up and surrounded Silent Wonder. Are you kidding me? Solitary Frost is using 4 absolute phantoms so soon. The female, Tier 3 assassin said from one of the other 7 stages, her jaw dropping as she watched Solitary Frost treat Silent Wonder as a true opponent. Yan Xiaoqian, who stood on the stage next to Solitary Frost's, revealed a grim expression, as well. Solitary Frost's 4 absolute phantoms was an incredible challenge to overcome for magical class players like her. The 4 doppelgangers weren't altogether fakes. One could only deal damage to Solitary Frost by attacking all 4 at once, and that wasn't the move's most frightening aspect. The true danger lay in the fact that Solitary 9 could control all of his doppelgangers with as much precision as he controlled his own body. Using doppelgangers in combat was immensely difficult in God_S domain. Controlling 2 bodies simultaneously would even reduce a peak expert's combat power. Ordinary domain realm experts would be lucky if they could control 3 bodies without sacrificing some of their performance. However, Solitary Frost could control all 4 doppelgangers without reducing any of their combat power. Of course, landing an attack against a domain realm expert without using a skill or spell was just as difficult. Domain realm experts could perceive all movement within their vicinity, after all. Relying on their keen senses, they could preemptively evade and launch counterattacks. Fighting Solitary Frost's 4 absolute phantoms would be as challenging as facing 4 domain realm experts simultaneously. For peak experts, this move was an absolute nightmare. And once a magical class player allowed a melee player, especially a domain realm expert, to move within attack range, it was game over. Amazing! Silent Wonder exclaimed, admiring Solitary Frost's perfect control. Face my 4 absolute phantoms. Silent Wonder's admiration wouldn't slow Solitary Frost down, and his 4 doppelgangers encircled their opponent, rapidly closing in. While Solitary Frost's doppelgangers drew closer, Silent Wonder began to wave her staff. 4 ice walls shot up from the stage around her, protecting her from all sides. Ice walls? She doesn't actually think such a low-tier defensive spell can stop Solitary Frost's attack, does she? The female assassin couldn't help but laugh. The spell, Ice Wall, could only be enhanced to Tier 2. It wasn't anywhere near strong enough to stop a Tier 3 player's full-powered attack. The spell wouldn't even buy Silent Wonder any time. Boring. Silent Wonder's opening move disappointed Solitary Frost a little, but he didn't pause his assault. He immediately cancelled his 4 absolute phantoms before brandishing his greatsword. The weapon transformed into 3 identical copies before converging on the ice wall before him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Combat Technique, Triple Heavy Slash. Boom! As the greatsword crashed into the ice wall, a deafening boom filled the arena. How is that possible? Oh. Solitary Frost was stunned and his attack failed to deal any damage to the ice wall. Moreover, the recoil had left both of his arms numb as if he had just struck an impenetrable wall. Oh. Chapter 2604, Fully Unlocked Mana Body. The audience was befuddled when they saw Solitary Frost's attack come to a grinding halt. It didn't break? But, isn't it only a Tier 2 defensive spell? Did Solitary Frost mess up his attack? The players in the spectator stands were all extremely familiar with the spell, Ice Wall. Before players had reached Tier 3, elementalists had used the spell to help protect their MTs from Great Lord-ranked bosses' attacks. However, both Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder were both bona fide Tier 3 players. Although their basic attributes had been equalized, they both had the attributes of Tier 3 players. A Tier 2 Ice Wall could, at most, buffer a Tier 3 attack. It shouldn't be able to stop such a blow, let alone one empowered with a combat technique. A Tier 2 Ice Wall can actually stop a Tier 3 Berserker's combat technique at full strength? Burning Owl was just as confused as everyone else after seeing Silent Wonder's Ice Wall intact. He had fought Tier 3 elementalists himself, but when they had used Ice Wall against him, the spell hadn't even stopped his normal attacks. He had tested this multiple times and never once failed to shatter an ice wall. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoqian stared at Silent Wonder in astonishment. Mana! Yan Xiaoqian exclaimed, sensing the dense mana radiating from Silent Wonder. She's already unlocked her mana body's full potential. Yan Xiaoqian wasn't the only magical class player to notice the sudden spike in mana around Silent Wonder. The only explanation any of them could think of was that the elementalist had fully unlocked her mana body. She actually unlocked her mana body? Amazing! Not even the super guilds have any members with a fully unlocked mana body yet. It seems my trip here wasn't in vain. I'll get to watch an expert with a fully unlocked mana body in battle. Everyone in the spectator stands began to talk about Silent Wonder. Their opinions of her had all changed. Rather than seeing her as just another member of Azure's younger generation, they saw her as a true powerhouse. Ha ha ha. Good. Wonderful. We might actually have a chance of claiming one of the top 3 positions now. Long Wushang, who sat among the audience, laughed joyously as he watched Silent Wonder. After failing to contact Silk Moon, the Long family had given up any hope of securing one of the top 3 positions in this competition. Now that they knew Silent Wonder had unlocked her mana body's full potential, however, securing one of those spots was almost certain. There was a massive strength difference between an expert with a fully unlocked mana body and one without. Tier 3 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies were almost half a tier stronger than ordinary Tier 3 experts. Every participant in this competition, excluding Solitary Frost, had, at most, reached the Void Realm. Although Silent Wonder had only reached the half-step Void Realm standard, she could easily defeat Void Realm experts with this advantage. Not even Yan Xiaoqian, who was only a step away from the Void Realm, would be a match for her. You've fully unlocked your mana body? Solitary Frost's fighting spirit flared, a passionate flame dancing in his eyes, when he looked at Silent Wonder behind the ice walls. It's no wonder why you were bold enough to challenge me. I've never fought an expert with a fully unlocked mana body, so show me how powerful it truly is. The Berserker raised his greatsword and leaped into the air, aiming for the one area where Silent Wonder didn't have an ice wall's protection. Advanced Combat Technique, 7 consecutive flashes. The greatsword transformed into 7 streaks of light, covering the entire area within the ice walls and leaving Silent Wonder no room to dodge. In response, Silent Wonder used Blink, immediately appearing 30 yards away and evading Solitary Frost's attack. With a wave of her staff, she then summoned over a dozen magical arrays around her opponent. The arrays released a barrage of flame spears, each with enough power to rival a Grand Lord of the same level. As if Solitary Frost had anticipated this move, he tightened his grip on his greatsword and twisted in the air. Tier 3 Skill, Berserk Dance. Solitary Frost rapidly rotated in the air, his greatsword leaving arcs of crimson light in its wake that blocked the incoming flame spears. He executed Berserk Dance with over a 90% completion rate even from that position. Is he a monster? Shocked, Burning Owl stared at the crimson sword lights surrounding Solitary Frost. While Tier 3 skills were quite powerful, achieving a high completion rate with them was very difficult. Even as a Void Realm expert, Burning Owl could only execute the Tier 3 Berserk Dance with around an 85% completion rate, and that was only with optimal conditions. Despite activating the skill in midair, however, Solitary Frost's completion rate was over 90%. Meanwhile, just as Solitary Frost was about to land, earthen spikes shot up from the ground below him. A two-pronged assault? That might be useful against peak experts, but it will do nothing against Solitary Frost, the female assassin standing on the nearby stage said, sneering at the magical attack. A domain realm expert could perceive everything within their surroundings. Even a perfectly timed ambush would be useless against such an expert. The instant they took action, the targeted domain realm expert would discover the attack. Still calm, the berserker brandished his greatsword and shattered the first round of earthen spikes. He then used his momentum to evade the second wave of spikes. Landing, Solitary Frost used Flame Charge, dashing towards Silent Wonder. Rather than make a beeline for his target, however, he combined a complex footwork technique with his charge. The berserker split into 6 afterimages, rushing towards Silent Wonder from different directions. Advanced footwork, Mirage Steps. His execution was flawless, and the afterimages were impossible to tell apart. In a fraction of a second, he was within 15 yards of the elementalist. It's over. Your mana body might have tremendously increased your casting speed and power, but you lack control of your surroundings. You still can't use your advantage to its fullest. Solitary Frost roared as he moved within 10 yards of Silent Wonder. He then swung his greatsword. Tier 3 Taboo Skill, Triple Flame Scythe. 3 flaming crescents threatened to devour Silent Wonder with even more power than that of a Grand Lord of the same level. But, just before the attack landed, a gigantic, crimson magic array appeared beneath Silent Wonder's and Solitary Frost's feet. The instant the array completed, a towering pillar of fire exploded forth. Not only did the flames swallow the 3 flaming crescents, but it devoured Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder, as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. What? A 3-pronged attack? She actually hit a red lotus of fire beneath her? Yan Shaoqian could not believe her eyes as she stared at the raging pillar of fire before her. Yan Shaoqian had assumed her rival had only prepared a 2-pronged attack. She had never dreamed that Silent Wonder would use herself as bait to lure Solitary Frost into the red lotus of fire, a tier 3 curse. After 3 seconds, the flaming pillar subsided, revealing Solitary Frost's charred corpse on the stage. Although Silent Wonder hadn't emerged from her own attack unscathed, she still had 1/3 of her HP remaining due casting Flame Shield earlier. I might not have a good grasp on my surroundings, but when it comes to power and technique, I'm much stronger than you. Silent Wonder told the berserker's motionless corpse. From above the stage, a bell rang, signifying the end of the match. At the same time, the system announced Silent Wonder as the victory, momentarily silencing the stunned crowd. Chapter 2605, Spiritualization Realm appears once more, Solitary Frost lost? This is a joke, right? He even rivals Wildfighter. A player can become so strong after fully unlocking their mana body? Silent Wonder's victory flabbergasted everyone. There were quite a few peak experts in the audience, as well as some domain realm experts. Hence, they hadn't had any trouble seeing and understanding what had happened in the battle between Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder. They were certain that Silent Wonder hadn't reached the Void Realm, and there was a massive difference between her and Solitary Frost. Even if her casting speed and spell power had greatly improved, thanks to unlocking her mana body's full potential, logically, Solitary Frost should have been able to bridge the gap by relying on his superior combat standards when their basic attributes were on the same level. In fact, despite not being a match for the Elementalist head-on, Solitary Frost had evaded all of her attacks and targeted Silent Wonder's weak points during the first half of the match. In the end, however, Solitary Frost had still lost. How were they supposed to wrap their minds around this? Second Sister won, just like that? Burning Owl was just as stunned as the players in the audience. He had thought that even if Silent Wonder was no match for Solitary Frost, no one else among Azure's younger generation could take on his second eldest sister. With her here, the Long family was practically guaranteed to retain its ruling rights in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. But he hadn't actually expected Silent Wonder to defeat Solitary Frost. Now, the other shareholder families had lost any excuse to threaten the Long family's position. Not even the Zeus Corporation would be able to complain about the family. Excellent. Magnificently done. Long Wuxiang was elated to see Silent Wonder still standing on the first stag. Never dreamed that she'd be capable of launching a three-pronged attack against Solitary Frost. Not even his third eldest brother, Long Xianglong, would have the leeway to execute such a complex tactic against a domain realm expert. Long Wuxiang had assumed Silent Wonder would lose the match. He had never expected such a pleasant surprise. With this victory, Silent Wonder was now the strongest member of Azure's younger generation. Even if the Long family lost the Zeus Corporation's support, this achievement would ensure that the family wouldn't have to worry about its position in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Now, the family's position was stronger than ever before. Just how did she manage to pinpoint her environment and opponent's behavior? Yan Xiaoqian muttered, staring at Silent Wonder. As a magical class player herself, Yan Xiaoqian knew Silent Wonder hadn't relied on luck to win the match. She had planned every move before the match had even begun. Although magical class players typically predicted their battle's progression beforehand, she had never seen anyone assess their opponent to such an extent. Silent Wonder's final move had been especially eye-opening since she had taken into account how much damage her Tier 3 course would deal to her and her opponent. It was as if she had orchestrated the entire battle. Silent Wonder looked like a completely different person to Yan Xiaoqian right now. Her rival certainly hadn't shown such abilities during the alchemy competition. While everyone grumbled about their confusion and dissatisfaction over Silent Wonder's marvelous performance, Sinful Flame gazed up at the girl from below the stage, excitement flashing in his eyes. "Is something wrong, Elder Flame?" a Tier 3 guild elder, who acted as the deputy referee for this competition, asked when he saw Sinful Flame's elation. Sinful Flame had seemed bored when he had been tasked to host the family competition this year. He actually found the responsibility annoying, yet he now seemed excited and interested in a younger member of the guild. It was unbelievable. Sinful Flame had been unfazed when he learned that Solitary Frost had reached the domain realm. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, hadn't even gotten that far. Although she had unlocked her mana body's full potential, she shouldn't be impressive enough to attract someone like Sinful Flame's interest. While unlocking one's mana body was a difficult endeavor for ordinary Tier 3 experts, it was only a matter of time for an expert of Sinful Flame's caliber. He was actually quite close to unlocking 100%, and would likely succeed in another 2 weeks or so. Hence, he shouldn't consider fully unlocking one's mana body that much of an achievement. The Spiritualization Realm. She's reached the Spiritualization Realm, and she's made considerable progress in it. Sinful Flame declared. It seems the younger generation is full of exceptional geniuses. The Spiritualization Realm? The Tier 3 elder was confused. He had no idea what Sinful Flame was going on about. Before the elder could ask, however, Sinful Flame jumped onto the stage and approached Silent Wonder. "Isn't the match over already? What's Elder Flame trying to do? Was there a problem with the match?" The spectators were even more confused to see Sinful Flame on the stage. Normally, the system decided a match's outcome. Its judgment was far more accurate than players', after all. If both opponents died by the end of the match, the system could determine whether they had died at the same time or if there had even been a millisecond between their deaths. No player could do the same. This was why players relied on the main God system to judge all matches in God's domain, barring special circumstances. However, the results of Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder's match was clear. There was no chance either of them could have cheated since players weren't allowed to use berserk skills or tools on the stage. Players weren't even allowed to use the additional active skills they gained from their weapons and equipment. Hence, there shouldn't be any dispute over the outcome. However, the crowd began to doubt the fact as they watched the famous Sinful Flame take the stage. He would be able to spot far more details than they could, after all. Sinful Flame doesn't intend to deny the match's result, does he? The situation began to make Long Wuxiang nervous. We're talking about the system's judgment. Silent Wonder's performance had involved many surprising aspects. If Sinful Flame had seen some peculiarity, his celebration would have been premature. Could she have actually cheated? In contrast, Duan Hanshan was overjoyed to see Sinful Flame interfere. He had thought his hopes of dethroning the Long family were lost, but it seemed that might not have been the case. While everyone discussed the matter in hushed whispers, Sinful Heart turned away from Silent Wonder and addressed the audience. Everyone, you have seen the match's outcome for yourselves, so you all know just how powerful Solitary Frost was. Without a doubt, he is the participant in this competition, Sinful Flame said. Now that Silent Wonder has defeated him, I'm sure you all realize who will win first place. Hence, I have a suggestion. Rather than waste time with the rest of the qualifying matches, why don't we host a more meaningful competition? Indeed. It doesn't make much sense to continue the qualifying matches. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Going straight into the main event isn't a bad idea. It's a pity that the first match was the most interesting. My seat isn't even warm, yet the competition is already over. Every player in the crowd nodded, agreeing to Sinful Flame's suggestion. Since Silent Wonder had proven herself stronger than Solitary Frost, the top 8 positions were as good as decided. Continuing the qualifying matches would be pointless. It would be much more interesting to proceed to the Peak Experts matches. Since Silent Wonder is the undisputed first-place winner of this competition, according to our regulations, I will face her later. How would you all feel about watching that match? Sinful Flame asked the crowd once the audience had agreed to his first suggestion. Chapter 2606. There are many who are stronger than me. Sinful Flame's question shocked every member of the audience. What? Sinful Flame is actually eager to fight Silent Wonder? He hadn't seemed very interested in when he had expected to face Solitary Frost, yet he looks like he's looking forward to the fight with Silent Wonder. Just how strong is she to get a reaction like this from him? Could Sinful Flame intend to learn more about his mana body by fighting Silent Wonder? The man's sudden suggestion took everyone by surprise. Although Silent Wonder's combat power had been astonishing, her combat standards were significantly weaker than Solitary Frost's, not to mention Sinful Flame. The only advantage she had was her fully unlocked mana body. That advantage was also the only reason anyone could think of that would pull such a reaction from Sinful Flame. Even now, no one knew how many experts with fully unlocked mana bodies the various superpowers had, if any. Most of the superpowers Tier 3 experts hadn't even begun to unlock their mana bodies. Of course, one might make some progress if they fought a player who had unlocked their mana body's full potential. What is Sinful Flame thinking? He's challenging a junior? Duan Hanshan could only glare at Sinful Flame, furious over the man's spontaneous act. Silent Wonder's victory over Solitary Frost had already boosted the Long family's prestige. The outcome practically ensured the family would retain its right to rule over Azure. By challenging Silent Wonder, Sinful Flame would only elevate the Long family's reputation further. This would definitely drive many of the guild's neutral elders and grand elders to the Long family's side. Meanwhile, Yan Shaoqian stared from a nearby stage, similarly stunned. How did things turn out like this? When at combat, Yan Shaoqian had always been more talented than Silent Wonder. After training with Violet Sword, she had even grown beyond seeing Silent Wonder as a serious opponent. However, it turned out that she had been seriously overestimating her abilities. Not only was Silent Wonder much stronger than her, but one of Azure's old legendary individuals also wanted to challenge the Elementalist. This won't do. I must stop him. Otherwise, the Long family will become unstoppable in Azure. Duan Hanshan snarled, quickly contacting the competition's deputy referee. Just as the deputy referee, an elder working under the Duan family, was about to interfere, the spectators broke into cheers. You have my support, Sinful Flame. Stop wasting time and get this started. While I wouldn't have minded watching Solitary Frost face Sinful Flame, seeing the old man fight an expert with a fully unlocked mana body will be awesome. This is beyond awesome. This will go down in God's Domain's history as a classic match. We'll get to see them pit power against technique. After their momentary shock over Sinful Flame's proposal, the various spectating Powers members fervently voiced their support for his decision. Many people even began to shout, demanding Sinful Flame begin his match against Silent Wonder immediately. Good. Since the audience approves, what of our various elders? Sinful Flame asked, turning to address the various shareholder families' elders and grand elders, who were in the midst of trying to stop him. The audience followed his gaze, staring at the elders and grand elders, silencing them into complacency. If they dared to refuse Sinful Flame, they'd have to answer to everyone in the arena. Damn it. Sinful Flame is insane. Duan Hanshan turned ashen when he heard Sinful Flame's nonchalant question. Forget it. Let them fight, a white-haired old man in black robes said as he approached Duan Hanshan. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, in any case. Sinful Flame might have raised that little girl standing, but if he kills her instantly, all of the glory the Long family just gained will be forgotten. Realizing the old man was right, Duan Hanshan and the various families' grand elders stopped trying to object. Since Elder Flame and the audience are so eager, this will be simple, Duan Hanshan said after calming down. He then looked at Sinful Flame and said, however, we need Wonder's agreement first. She just finished a match, and I'm afraid fighting a senior such as yourself so soon after. Sinful Flame nodded in response. His goal was very simple, he wanted to fight Silent Wonder. Some things could only be experienced firsthand, after all. He wanted to face the girl at her peak. However, before Sinful Flame could speak up, a crisp voice interrupted him. I'm fine. Besides, I'd actually enjoy a proper fight against Elder Flame to test the extent of my development, Silent Wonder said. Long Wuxiang, who watched from the stands, began to grow nervous. Why is this girl so foolish? That old ice demon is clearly provoking her. Anxiously, Long Wuxiang said, this won't do. I need to warn her. Even if the elders gave Silent Wonder some time to recuperate, it wouldn't be long. And even if she recovered all of the stamina and mana she had used during the prior match, her concentration couldn't recover that quickly. In a battle between high-caliber experts, concentration was more important than anything. Without her full concentration, this match might end as quickly as it began. If that happened, the glory Silent Wonder had earned for her family with her last victory would vanish. Long Wuxiang didn't have enough time to contact Silent Wonder before Sinful Flame returned his attention to the young woman, however. Girl, while your fight with Solitary Frost was short, you expended a considerable amount of your concentration. I wish to fight you at your peak. I don't want to fight just for the sake of winning. I won't fight you in such a state. You best take some time to rest, Sinful Flame calmly said. Please, rest assured, Elder Flame. My match with Solitary Frost hadn't cost much effort. I don't need to rest, Silent Wonder definitively replied. Meanwhile, Solitary Frost, who had just resurrected below the stage, nearly fainted from rage. How arrogant. Silent Wonder was far too cocky. Even the spectating crowd seemed displeased with Silent Wonder's comment. While her match with Solitary Frost hadn't lasted long, it had been a soul-stirring battle. Yet Silent Wonder spoke as if she hadn't given it her all. While it's good to be confident, Wonder, I don't want to hear any excuses when you lose too quickly, Duan Hanshan warned her softly. You worry too much, Elder Hanshan. A loss is a loss. I won't offer any excuses. Moreover, I haven't had enough training. There are many people in the guild who are stronger than me, even though we're the same age, so defeat wouldn't be unusual for me, Silent Wonder said. With her statement hanging in the air, the entire arena fell silent. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Silent Wonder is so already strong, yet she's saying that Zero Wing has members that are even stronger and around the same age? A boast. She must be boasting. The various super guilds don't even have many players that can rival Solitary Frost, much less Silent Wonder. That's right. Zero Wing might be quite famous in the East, but it shouldn't be able to nurture talents as well as super guilds. Azure's various shareholder families refuse to believe Silent Wonder's claim, glaring contemptuously at her. Since that is the case, I have a suggestion. Seeing as Wonder's concentration hasn't fully recovered, why don't we send one of Zero Wing's young talents in her place? I'm sure Elder Flame will still benefit, and didn't she just say that her guild has plenty of youngsters that are even stronger than her? Duan Hanzhan suggested, sneering at Silent Wonder. Chapter 2607, Zero Wing's Young Talent. When Duan Hanzhan finished speaking, the arena fell silent again. None of them had ever dreamed that he'd suggest such a thing. Vicious. Truly vicious. It'll be very hard for Silent Wonder to take back her claim now. It's her own fault for boasting. She actually gave Old Ice Demon a chance to strike. I wonder if she'll stick by what she said. Zero Wing must be freaking out right about now. Azure's various shareholder families snickered at the young woman on the first stage. They acknowledged that she had become much stronger than they were, but excessive bragging was annoying. The family's younger members found it particularly obnoxious. These younger members hadn't had anything against Silent Wonder, but now that she had insulted them, they were eager to watch her make a fool of herself. Meanwhile, excitement shot through the audience like lightning. They couldn't wait to see how Silent Wonder would get herself out of this predicament. This is interesting. Zero Wing is the guild that arrived aboard a flying ship, right? I wonder if Zero Wing is as strong as Silent Wonder claims? If it is, this upcoming match will be quite a spectacle. It's definitely just an empty boast. Silent Wonder will likely fumble as she tries to take back her words. I doubt we'll see a match between Zero Wing and Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame is a legend in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. The fact that he's willing to face one of Azure's up-and-coming talents is already a miracle. He'll likely refuse to fight an outsider. Curious, the audience turned to Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame was quite famous in the virtual gaming world, but he rarely fought other players. The challenge he had issued Silent Wonder was already an incredibly rare opportunity. Trying to convince him to fight an unknown outsider would likely be a major challenge. As everyone expected Sinful Flame to refuse, he turned to Silent Wonder and asked in earnest, "Are you telling the truth?" The crowd turned their gaze to Silent Wonder. This was her chance to retract her previous statement. If she claimed it had been a joke, she could get away with just a little embarrassment, but if she insisted, her prestige would go down the drain. It's true. If Elder Flame doesn't mind, you can challenge one of them, Silent Wonder said, nodding. Everyone shook their heads in disapproval. Sinful Flame had given her an opportunity to save herself, yet she chose to stick with her claim to elevate Zero Wing's reputation. Ha ha ha. Xiao Qian, Silent Wonder must really be insane. Does she think Zero Wing is God? Does she think that just any random young talent can fight Elder Flame? The female, Tier 3 assassin said, laughing. However, Yan Xiaoqian, who stood on the stage next to the female assassins, did not respond. She knew that Zero Wing indeed possessed a monster capable of fighting Sinful Flame. That person was Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. Black Flame was an individual that even Adolf, the light saint of Divine Tribe, had to treat prudently. If Black Flame wished to salvage Zero Wing's reputation, he might actually face Sinful Flame. While Silent Wonder's reply surprised the crowd, Sinful Flame's eyes glowed with excitement. He then turned his gaze toward Zero Wing's members and asked, "May I know if anyone from Zero Wing is willing to take Wonder's place?" Sinful Flame's question hadn't been loud, but every word was laced with determination and power. He was obviously serious, and there was even a hint of anticipation in his tone. What? They're really going to fight? This is interesting. I wonder who Zero Wing will send? I've heard that Zero Wing's guild leader is extremely powerful, despite being relatively young. He is also one of the top 30 experts on the God's Domain experts list. It would be awesome if these two fought each other. The audience was beside itself, all too eager to watch the upcoming match. Everyone looked up to the top 30 experts on the God's Domain experts list. However, most players didn't get the chance to meet these experts, let alone watch a match between two of them. God's Domain was incredibly large, and barring special circumstances, the top 30 experts rarely crossed paths. The various major powers in the spectator stands weren't the only ones curious to see who Zero Wing would send to face Sinful Flame. Duan Hanshan was just as interested. In Duan Hanshan's opinion, the only person Zero Wing could send was Black Flame. During the alchemy competition, Black Flame had shocked everyone with his identity as a Tier 3 Sword King. Even the Long family's Long Xianglong had been forced to admit defeat. Since he had reached Tier 3 far sooner than anyone else, he was incredibly powerful. Based on appearances, Black Flame shouldn't be much older than Silent Wonder. Normally, as Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame wouldn't casually take action, but he might accept Sinful Flame's challenge to protect his guild's reputation. He was, after all, the only member of Zero Wing who could put up a fight. During the time the Long family and Duan family wondered if Black Flame would make a move, Shifeng turned to the lithe figure beside him. "Violet, go fight him." "Understood." After a brief conversation, the woman beside Shifeng bounced down from the spectator stands and onto the stage. She radiated the sacred aura unique to clerics. Is Zero Wing looking down on Sinful Flame? They're sending a cleric to fight? Everyone was shocked as they watched Violet Cloud make her way to join Sinful Flame on the stage. They never thought that Zero Wing would pull such a move. Even Azure's various shareholder families were astonished. Zero Wing was insane. While the cleric class played a role in combat, battle wasn't the class's priority. Sending a cleric against Sinful Flame, Azure's publicly acknowledged strongest member, was a mockery. Although Violet Cloud hid her statistics with a black cloak, she didn't bother to conceal her appearance. Everyone could clearly see that she was much younger than Silent Wonder, still a teenager. Not only had Zero Wing sent a cleric to face Sinful Flame, but she was also just a young girl. This was a blatant insult. Zero Wing is dead for sure now. Even if Silent Wonder's boast is true, does the guild have to send such a young lady to fight? Elder Flame must be furious. The female, Tier 3 assassin covered her eyes with a hand. She could bear to watch what would happen next. Sinful Flame had always been a serious fighter, and to improve his skills, he pushed himself so hard that others thought him a lunatic. One could easily imagine how enraged Sinful Flame must be with Zero Wing mocking his strength. The man would definitely vent his anger out on Violet Cloud with a good beating. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU's Sinful Flame chose this moment to release his aura, which burst from him, spreading to his surroundings like a powerful tsunami and threatening to devour all in its path. Even Solitary Frost, who stood below the stage, felt suffocated as he bathed in Sinful Flame's aura. So, this is our guild's strongest expert? Solitary Frost could not help his grin when he sensed the elder man's killing intent. Solitary Frost had assumed that he could put up a good fight, even if he couldn't defeat Sinful Flame. In this competition's matches, the fighters' basic attributes were equalized, after all. It would be a match purely involving combat techniques. However, looking at the man now, it seemed he had merely been dreaming. He'd be lucky if he survived a few moves against Sinful Flame, much less put up a good fight. However, despite sensing Sinful Flame's unrestrained aura, Violet Cloud leisurely walked toward the center of the stage, stopping before Sinful Flame. "Shall we begin?" Violet Cloud asked sweetly. Chapter 2608, Match between Monsters. The entire arena momentarily fell silent at Violet Cloud's words as everyone stared at the cleric girl in astonishment. Is she tired of living? Sinful Flame had already made his dissatisfaction with this upcoming match very clear through his behavior. If not for him serving as the host of this important competition, everyone was certain he would have slaughtered her already. While this was only a fighting competition without any death penalty, Sinful Flame could kill his opponent any way he wanted. Meanwhile, there were plenty of methods he could employ to humiliate Zero Wing. What is Black Flame trying to do? That's Sinful Flame. We'll lose the independent elders and grand elders' support if we anger him. Without them, how is Wonder supposed to negotiate with the Zeus Corporation? Long Wuxiang grew nervous as he glanced at Shi Feng, who remained seated calmly in the spectator stands. Silent Wonder's progress up to this point had astounded Long Wuxiang. However, if they wished to change the Zeus Corporation's mind, they definitely could not do so without the support of Azure's independent elders and grand elders. Meanwhile, Sinful Flame could be said to be the representative of these independent elders and grand elders. By sending a cleric to fight Sinful Flame, Zero Wing would not only suffer a humiliating defeat at Sinful Flame's hands but also thoroughly offend the man. This was the height of foolishness. At this moment, let alone Long Wuxiang, even the members of the other shareholder families were at a loss for words at this situation. While it might seem a little shameful, Black Flame clearly could have stepped up to fight. In that case, Sinful Flame would enjoy himself thoroughly and more or less support Silent Wonder. However, as if thinking that it hadn't been arrogant enough, Zero Wing had actually sent a young cleric out. The guild had to be tired of living. Meanwhile, as everyone was saying a silent prayer for Violet Cloud, Sinful Flame put some distance between himself and the young cleric. You attack first. I'll give you only one chance. Let me see whether you are as strong as Wonder said. If you turn out to be a sham, I'll let you have a taste of hell. Sinful Flame said coldly as he looked at Violet Cloud. I can attack first? Violet Cloud asked strangely. That's right. If your performance doesn't meet my expectations, I'll make you regret ever standing on this stage. Sinful Flame confirmed, nodding. Then, I'll really attack now, Violet Cloud said tentatively, seeking confirmation once more. Stop with all the nonsense. I already said I'll let you attack first, so do it. This is your only opportunity. After Violet Cloud repeatedly sought confirmation, Sinful Flame very nearly lost what little patience he had left. However, before Sinful Flame could finish his words, Violet Cloud suddenly took out her staff and started chanting an incantation. Immediately, with Violet Cloud as the center, a silvery gray, twofold magic array appeared on the stage and sucked in a massive amount of mana from the arena. After this phenomenon continued for 3 seconds, the ambient mana inside the venue had become distinctly thinner. Before anyone could react to this drastic change, 22 shadow blades appeared around Violet Cloud, rotating around her and making her look like the goddess of darkness incarnate. The cleric also released a frightening aura rivaling that of mythic monsters of the same level. Everyone inside the arena could sense their basic attributes decreasing rapidly. Is she a monster? What kind of domain skill is this? Aside from my basic attributes, I can also feel my physique getting heavily suppressed. It's as if this entire space is rejecting my existence. Everyone was stunned by this situation. After all, Violet Cloud looked nothing like a sacred cleric now but more like the embodiment of darkness. Moreover, everyone could clearly sense that the space within the entire arena currently centered around her. It was as if she could decide the life and death of everything inside the venue with just a thought. Before everyone could properly react to this situation, Violet Cloud looked at Sinful Flame, 40 yards away from her, and said, I'll start now. After saying so, she lightly waved her staff. The 22 shadow blades immediately transformed into a black hole that shot towards Sinful Flame. Bronze combat technique, spatial smash. In the next moment, everything in the wake of this black hole was reduced into nothingness. The black hole's destructive power was something not even a mythic monster of the same level could receive. A bronze combat technique? How is this possible? When Duan Hanshan saw this scene, he gaped in shock. It was simply impossible for players to exhibit power at the Tier 4 standard just by relying on an ordinary Tier 3 spell. The only explanation for this situation was that Violet Cloud had executed a bronze combat technique. As to why Duan Hanshan assumed the combat technique she used was at the bronze rank instead of the advanced rank, it was because only bronze combat techniques could grant players the power to transcend tiers. However, mastering a bronze combat technique was simply too difficult. In fact, most domain realm experts in the game still hadn't managed to do so. Now, however, a little girl who was only at the Void Realm had actually executed a bronze combat technique successfully. This was simply incredible. At this moment, Solitary Frost was also astonished by this scene. A bronze combat technique. Even until now, he still hadn't managed to master a single bronze combat technique, yet a little girl much younger than himself had. Moreover, Violet Cloud had even executed her bronze combat technique so perfectly. Now, Sinful Flame's only option was to receive her attack directly. There was simply no way he could dodge that attack of hers. Splendid. When Sinful Flame first saw the approaching black hole, surprise flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, though, excitement replaced that surprise. He swiftly unsheathed the two longswords he carried on his back and merged them into a greatsword. He then swung the greatsword at the empty space before him. Tier 3 Taboo Skill, Space-Tearing Blade. Advanced Combat Technique, Quadruple Phantoms. In the next moment, a frightening amount of mana burst out of the greatsword. As Sinful Flame swung the greatsword, the weapon split into 4 copies of itself before merging once more, the merged weapon cutting apart even space itself. Boom! When sword and black hole collided, a powerful explosion shook the entire arena. For a moment, a violent quake rocked the venue, the intense shockwave sending the players standing below the stage, stumbling several steps back. A 30-yard wide crater also appeared on the mana or stage. To everyone's surprise, though, both Sinful Flame and Violet Cloud emerged unscathed from the clash. Crap! Who is she? She actually stopped a full-powered attack from Elder Flame. Wonder was telling the truth. The members of Azure's various shareholder families goggled in shock when they saw Violet Cloud unharmed. The battle no longer looked like a contest between players, it was practically a battle between two giant monsters. Every one of their actions could shatter space and transform the terrain around them. Impossible. What kind of guild is this Zero Wing? When Duan Hanshan saw Violet Cloud continuously using her shadow blades against Sinful Flame, preventing the latter from approaching her, immense shock filled his heart. Previously, Duan Hanshan viewed Zero Wing merely as a guild seeking to gain the Azure Chamber of Commerce's support. However, Silent Wonder and Violet Cloud were now monstrously strong, despite neither of them having very high combat standards. One wouldn't be able to find such powerful youngsters even in super guilds. This was especially true for Violet Cloud. By relentlessly attacking with her shadow blades, she kept Sinful Flame at least 10 yards away at all times. This was a feat that was impossible even for Duan Hanshan, yet Violet Cloud, who was only one of Zero Wing's young talents, managed. However, as the fight on the stage intensified, the concentration both sides consumed also grew. This was especially true for Violet Cloud. Her control over her shadow blades started to decline. What a pity. Your understanding of the spiritualization realm is clearly leagues above mine. You have even given me plenty of inspiration. Unfortunately, your mental perception is still too weak. You are incapable of properly taking advantage of your superior understanding and maximizing your combat power. You are also incapable of minimizing your concentration consumption. At this rate, you'll last for at most another dozen seconds or so before being incapacitated, Sinful Flame commented while blocking Violet Cloud's relentless onslaught. This isn't an outcome I wish to see either. Originally, I intended to save this trump card for my rematch against those two people, but I'll give you a taste ahead of time. After saying so, Sinful Flame changed his footwork, his body suddenly splitting into 12 copies of itself. Bronze footwork, shadow prey. In the next moment, Sinful Flame's 12 doppelgangers continuously flickered, rendering all of Violet Cloud's attacks ineffective. In the end, she could only watch as he closed in on her. However, as Sinful Flame moved increasingly closer to Violet Cloud, the shadow blades surrounding her suddenly disappeared. From an outsider's perspective, it looked as if she had given up on resisting and was waiting quietly for his arrival. What's going on? Did she give up? That's reasonable. Who could possibly stop such an attack? The fact that she lasted until now already makes her one of the top-ranking existences among the younger generation in God's domain. When the spectating crowd saw Violet Cloud apparently abandoning her struggle, none of them jeered or blamed her for doing so. It was very normal for Violet Cloud to suffer defeat. After all, even among the older generation of gamers, very few people could win against Sinful Flame. When Sinful Flame got within 15 yards of Violet Cloud, the cleric suddenly sighed and stabbed her staff into the ground. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Indeed, just like the guild leader said, I am no match for you when it comes to combat standards. I am also incapable of bridging the gap, even with my mana body's potential fully unlocked. It seems I have no choice but to go all out. This is a trump card that even my guild leader isn't aware of. Violet Cloud's body started radiating much denser mana than before, her mana now many times stronger than Silent Wonder's. At the same time, the suppression effect of the cleric's domain became even more frightening, so powerful that the phantom Sinful Heart had summoned had decreased from 12 to 8. This sudden turn of events flabbergasted everyone inside the arena. Didn't she fully unlock her mana body already? Why is the density of her mana still increasing? Wasn't she using her mana body to fight before? Oh. Chapter 2609, Breaking Through the Limits. Upon sensing the powerful torrent of mana spilling forth from Violet Cloud's body, let alone the peanut gallery, even Shifeng, who had been sitting calmly in the spectator stands all this time, revealed a look of astonishment on his face. Mana burst? Violet actually broke through the limit so quickly? Shifeng muttered to himself in shock as he gazed at Violet Cloud, his shock much greater than what anyone else present in the arena felt. Breakthrough? Guild leader, what did Violet break through? Aqua Rose, who had overheard Shifeng's mutterings, could not help asking. From Shifeng's reaction, she deduced that he knew what Violet Cloud had done to become so powerful. At this moment, Aqua Rose wasn't the only person curious about this situation. The other Zero Wing members also turned to Shifeng with eyes wide with interest. They all wished to know what Violet Cloud had done to boost the density of her mana to such an extent, surpassing even that of ordinary tier 4 NPCs. Violet broke through the shackles of the mana body, surpassing the 100% limit and entering a new realm, Shifeng explained when he saw the looks of anticipation everyone was giving him. Breaking through the limits of the mana body was something he longed to accomplish. It would improve his chances of completing his tier 4 promotion quest and the Divine Dragon's trial. However, he never thought that Violet Cloud would actually beat him to it. He also had to admit that Violet Cloud was truly talented. Her reaching tier 6 in the past had definitely not been a fluke. She was far more talented than the expert players who had reached tier 6 with the help of a guild. Guild leader, doesn't the mana body reach perfection after hitting 100% potential? How can it go beyond 100%? Fire Dance asked in astonishment. After her mana body reached 100% potential, Fire Dance had gotten a sense of perfection from it. When she manipulated her mana body and used skills and spells with it, she felt that there was no longer any room for improvement. Hence, she found it truly hard to imagine that she could break through such a state. At this moment, aside from Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, Cola, and the others were also puzzled. Their mana bodies should have achieved perfection after reaching 100% potential. Even if the mana bodies could still improve, that should only happen after they had broken through the tier 3 bottleneck and reached tier 4. I believe some of you have achieved a completion rate beyond 100% when using skills and spells. Similarly, 100% potential is not the end for the mana body, but a new beginning. Only, the difficulty of unlocking a mana body past the 100% threshold is much greater. You can say that not even one player out of 10,000 tier 3 experts is capable of it, Shifeng explained as he gazed at Violet Cloud with some yearning. Although I don't know how far beyond the limit Violet managed to go, it seems this fight is over. Over? Can Violet win this match? Aqua Rose asked. When she heard Shifeng saying so, she returned her attention to the stage Violet Cloud and Sinful Flame stood on. At this moment, the suppression from Violet Cloud's domain skill had reduced the number of phantom Sinful Flame created from 12 to 8. This meant a 30% decline in Sinful Flame's combat power, at the very least. Even so, Violet Cloud's chances of winning still weren't good. After all, she still had to deal with a considerable number of phantoms. She might be able to slow down Sinful Flame's approach, but she wouldn't be able to stop him from reaching her. Meanwhile, so long as a magical class allowed a melee class to get within attacking range of them, the battle would be as good as over. It might be a different story if Violet Cloud's opponent weren't a melee player but a magical class player instead. In that case, victory would definitely be possible. After all, the mana Violet Cloud currently exuded was incredibly frightening. With such mana, she could exert a powerful influence over the ambient mana around her, making it difficult for nearby magical class players to wield the ambient mana. She would have an overwhelming advantage over her opponent. Unfortunately, not only was Sinful Flame a melee player, but his class was the peak hidden class, Shadow Knight. The Shadow Knight class was like a fusion of the Assassin, Berserker, and Guardian Knight classes. It possessed the agility of Assassins, the strength of Berserkers, and the defense of Guardian Knights. To top it all off, Sinful Flame also had incredibly high combat standards. These were the reasons why Sinful Flame was publicly acknowledged as the strongest player in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. With such an opponent, Aqua Rose found it inconceivable that Violet Cloud could win. After all, stronger mana simply made Violet Cloud's skills and spells more powerful. However, skills and spells that couldn't land on their targets were useless. At this moment, Aqua Rose wasn't the only person with such thoughts. Everyone spectating this fight shared similar thoughts. After all, this was common sense in God's domain. While having powerful mana was indeed helpful to players, this advantage came into play mainly when dealing with monsters. Amazing! You are actually capable of elevating your combat power that much. With just this move, you can confidently seat yourself among the top 3 of God's domain's younger generation. Sinful Flame praised when he saw the eruption of mana from Violet Cloud. However, he did not stop his actions in the slightest. On the contrary, he further sharpened them instead. When Sinful Flame got within 10 yards of Violet Cloud, he split his greatsword into 2 longswords again and brandished them to create over 24 phantom snakes. Not only was every phantom snake incredibly nimble, but they also accurately struck at Violet Cloud's blind spots and vital points, leaving her no room to dodge or block at all. Tier 3 Skill, Shadow Assault. Advanced Combat Technique, Phantom Snakes. Sinful Flame had perfectly integrated his Tier 3 skill with his advanced combat technique, his attack making it seem as if more than 24 Grand Lords were attacking Violet Cloud simultaneously. Upon seeing this, everyone could not help but gasp. Is he still human? He's actually capable of launching over 24 attacks rivaling the power of a Grand Lord simultaneously. Who could possibly stop that? So, this is Sinful Flame's trademark move, technique integration? If I could learn even a portion of this technique, it would be unbeatable in a kingdom. But that girl from Zero Wing really is amazing. She's forced Sinful Flame to reveal his trademark move time after time. Even if she loses, she'll still rank at the top among God's domain's younger players. Although the members of the various spectating powers were in awe of Sinful Flame's techniques, they also felt admiration and envy for Violet Cloud. After all, despite her youth, Violet Cloud was pressuring a legendary individual like Sinful Flame. With such talent, Violet Cloud's future would definitely be dazzlingly bright. Given a few more years, she might become a legendary individual herself in the virtual gaming world. Meanwhile, when the 24 or so phantom snakes arrived within 1 yard of Violet Cloud, the cleric finally made a move. Disappear. Violet Cloud commanded in a low tone. every phantom snake trying to attack her instantly vanished. Before anyone could react to the situation, the dense mana surrounding Violet Cloud transformed into shadow blades once more. This time, however, Violet Cloud had summoned 36 shadow blades. Moreover, every shadow blade left behind a pitch-black wake as they rotated around Violet Cloud. Spatial tears? Impossible. Everyone was stunned at the sight of the shadow blades rotating around Violet Cloud. The power of the shadow blades Violet Cloud summoned previously had merely rivaled that of Grand Lords. Only when she executed a bronze combat technique using the shadow blades had she exhibited power at the Tier 4 standard. However, executing bronze combat techniques consumed a lot of concentration. Hence, Violet Cloud couldn't execute Tier 4 attacks any time she wanted. She had to wait for an opportunity to land a decisive blow. Now, however, every one of her shadow blades carried power at the Tier 4 standard. The increase to her combat power was simply unfathomable. In other words, even without resorting to a combat technique, Violet Cloud could casually unleash attacks at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, she now had 36 shadow blades under her command. At this moment, let alone the spectating audience, even Sinful Flame himself could not help being stunned by this situation. During the brief instant Sinful Flame was dazed, the 36 shadow blades surrounded him and stopped just an inch away from him. Now, any strange movement on his part would bring his body into contact with the shadow blades, subjecting him to a Tier 4 attack. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, Violet Cloud did not do anything more. She simply restrained Sinful Flame at his current position and looked at him quietly. "Ha! You really hid your strength deeply, little girl." "Alright, I admit defeat," Sinful Flame sighed when he saw that sneaking out of the Shadow Blade's encirclement was impossible. Previously, Violet Cloud could execute only one Tier 4 attack at a time, so he could still put up a fight. Now, however, the young lady controlled 36 shadow blades carrying power at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, judging by the girl's complexion, controlling the blades apparently did not require much concentration. With this, he really had no way to continue fighting. As soon as Sinful Flame admitted defeat, the stage bell rang, signifying the end of the match. Violet Cloud's name was displayed above the stage, along with the word "winner." The entire arena fell silent as everyone stared at Violet Cloud. Chapter 26:10, Frightening Zero Wing. I'm dreaming, right? Sinful Flame actually lost? This is too absurd. Are you sure that girl's not an old monster in disguise? That shouldn't be the case. I feel that she might be a disguised NPC of Zero Wings. Otherwise, how could a measly Tier 3 player control 36 blades with power at the Tier 4 standard? It took a long time for the match's results to sink in. However, when everyone snapped out of their daze, they could not help but question this match, feeling that Violet Cloud wasn't human. Sinful Flame's strength was deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Nobody present had believed that Violet Cloud could defeat him. In fact, they had initially doubted that she could even get him to take her seriously. However, Violet Cloud had not only gotten Sinful Flame to use his full strength but even defeated the man. Moreover, she had achieved such an overwhelming victory that Sinful Flame couldn't retaliate and had no choice but to concede the battle. The spectators couldn't wrap their heads around the thought of such a huge disparity in combat power between Violet Cloud and Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame represented the very apex of players in God's domain, yet a little girl in her teens just surpassed this apex, and had even done so in a situation where both sides possessed equal basic attributes. Violet Cloud's achievement defied common sense. While everyone present had seen geniuses before, even those geniuses had their limits. Violet Cloud could no longer be considered just a genius. After all, her achievements were simply impossible for current players. At this moment, let alone the various spectating powers, even the members of Azure found this situation unbelievable. This was especially true for Solitary Frost and Duan Hanshan, who stood below the stage. Wonder wasn't bluffing, when Solitary Frost thought back to the words Silent Wonder said before, he was stunned. What kind of guild is this Zero Wing? When Silent Wonder declared that there were much younger and stronger people than herself in Zero Wing, Solitary Frost had felt that she was only trying to advertise and uplift her guild. Back when he was undergoing training at Violet Sword, he had sparred with many of Violet Sword's young talents. However, less than a handful of them managed to put up a fight against him, much less defeat him. The fact that Silent Wonder surpassed him was already a miracle. Moreover, even on the Eastern continent, Zero Wing was only a pseudo-superpower. How could such a guild nurture a youngster that was stronger than Silent Wonder? Now, however, it was proven that not only had Zero Wing produced a youngster that was much stronger than Solitary Frost, but the youngster in question was even stronger than the legendary Sinful Flame. How can a little girl from Zero Wing become that strong? Could this be why the Long family insists on letting Silent Wonder remain in Zero Wing? Duan Hanshan suddenly felt enlightened as he looked at Violet Cloud before turning his gaze to Long Wuxiang and the other members of the Long family. Duan Hanshan was well aware of Silent Wonder's combat talent. Let alone the Long family's Silk Moon, Silent Wonder was inferior to even Yan Shaoqian in this regard. Needless to say, she was even more inferior to the combat maniac Solitary Frost. Previously, when Silent Wonder defeated Solitary Frost, Duan Hanshan could still dismiss the feat as a result of Silent Wonder having an epiphany. After all, while Silent Wonder's talents were inferior to those of the other prodigies of Azure, she was still undoubtedly a prodigy herself. It wouldn't be strange for her to raise her combat power by a large margin after gaining fresh insight. However, Violet Cloud's performance forced Duan Hanshan to conclude that Silent Wonder's sudden growth shouldn't have anything to do with gaining enlightenment at all. Instead, Zero Wing was most likely the cause. After thinking up to this point, Duan Hanshan started pondering on new plans. For Azure's various shareholder families, the younger generation represented their future. The members of the younger generation would also serve as the guild's representatives in the future. Hence, nurturing the younger generation in Azure was of paramount importance. In virtual reality games, so long as one had sufficient strength, there wouldn't be a need to worry about lacking a path. This was especially true in God's domain, which functioned as a second world for humans. God's domain could even extend the lifespan people could experience by a large margin. For people with strength, God's domain's appearance represented the start of a golden era. This was also the reason why Azure's various shareholder families were desperately trying to retain the Zeus Corporation's support. In God's domain, strength was the foundation of everything. Without strength, one would be nothing. However, while Duan Hanshan was having such thoughts, Long Wuxiang, who stood some distance away from him, remained in a daze. At this moment, complicated feelings roiled Long Wuxiang's heart. He simply did not know whether to cry or laugh. Not only had Silent Wonder won against Solitary Frost and shone brightly in the family competition, but she had even received a challenge from Sinful Flame, which boosted the opinion of Azure's independent elders and grand elders of her. Now, Violet Cloud had even beaten Sinful Flame, a feat nobody had ever dreamed of accomplishing. Zero Wing's ability to nurture talents truly surpassed Long Wuxiang's imagination. With Zero Wing's help, the Long family might really be able to do without the Zeus Corporation's support. After all, the Long family had funds aplenty. What they needed were only the Zeus Corporation's various resources and connections. When Long Wuxiang thought back to how he was planning to negotiate with Zero Wing to have it stop hindering Silent Wonder's future, he found his thoughts laughable. Meanwhile, as everyone was expressing doubt and astonishment over this match, Sinful Flame walked up to Violet Cloud. "I don't care what others say, I am sincerely convinced of my loss," Sinful Flame said earnestly as he looked at Violet Cloud. "Only, may I ask you a question?" "What is it?" Violet Cloud asked. Since Sinful Flame was so open-minded about his defeat, she did not refuse his question. Upon hearing Violet Cloud's response, Sinful Flame quickly asked, "How did you manage to elevate the density of your mana to such an extent just now? Didn't you fully unlock your mana body already?" He was filled with curiosity about Violet Cloud's sudden transformation. At the start of the fight, he had already sensed the mana Violet Cloud's body radiated, which made him absolutely certain she had fully unlocked her mana body already. The spells she used later on only served to confirm his conjecture. However, at the end of the match, the density of the mana she radiated and the power of her spells had further increased by a large margin. He simply couldn't understand how she had accomplished this feat. It's nothing. I just managed to break through the 100% limit of my mana body, hence, I was able to release much stronger mana, Violet Cloud explained calmly. The fact that the mana body could be unlocked past the 100% threshold wasn't much of a secret. In her opinion, it was only a matter of time before an expert like Sinful Flame accomplished this feat as well. After all, if even she could break through the 100% limit, there was no way Sinful Heart, who boasted much higher combat standards than she did, could not. She had managed to do so much sooner than Sinful Flame only because of the many resources Zero Wing had provided. You can actually unlock the mana body past the 100% threshold? Sinful Flame exclaimed in surprise. Currently, he was already close to unlocking 100% of his mana body's potential. In his opinion, 100% should mean perfection. Moreover, the system should have set it to be so, as well. It never occurred to him that the mana body could be unlocked beyond 100%. Violet Cloud's words opened the doors to a whole new world for him. Then, is there anyone else in your guild that has managed to exceed 100%? Sinful Flame asked. Having experienced the strength players would gain from having a mana body unlocked beyond the 100% threshold, he knew that such players wouldn't be capable of truly fighting against Tier 4 existences. However, they would still be dosed to rivaling Tier 4 existences and were on a completely different level from ordinary Tier 3 existences. I don't know, but there are a few other people who are roughly equal in strength with me. There are also quite a few people stronger than me, Violet Cloud replied after giving the matter some thought. There are still a few others that are stronger than you? Sinful Flame reflexively turned to look at Shurfeng and the other Zero Wing members seated in the spectator stands, when he heard Violet Cloud's words. He suddenly felt as if his worldview was collapsing. Violet Cloud was already inhumanly strong, yet Zero Wing actually had a few more experts that were stronger than her? Just what kind of guild was Zero Wing? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, the discussions did not continue for long before Azure's family competition resumed. Only, the subsequent matches paled in comparison to the first two matches of this competition. And to everyone's disappointment, nothing surprising occurred. In the end, Silent Wonder won first place in the competition, Solitary Frost came in second, with Yan Xiaoqian in third, and Burning Owl in fourth. The Long family thoroughly occupied the spotlight for the competition this time. Many of Azure's independent elders and grand elders even started engaging Silent Wonder in small talk, the scene rendering the members of the other shareholder family speechless. Some families were even wondering if they should approach the Long family. Solitary, what should we do? How do we explain this to the instructor? Yan Xiaoqian asked Solitary Frost, who was standing quietly beside her, when she saw Silent Wonder surrounded by Azure's independent elders and grand elders. What else can we do but tell the truth? Solitary Frost sighed. If you are afraid of telling him, I'll do it. Following which, Solitary Frost contacted Violet Sword's instructor Tori and braced himself to report everything that had happened in the family competition. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.